Peace, family. Y'all know who it is. It's Bakari Lumumba back once again, the progenitor of LumumbaSpeaks.com, with a special guest, the man, the myth, the legend, the brother I call Mr. International, none other than Priest Donna Zamir of Search for Uhuru. How you doing today?
Man, I appreciate that intro. I thought you was about to hate.
Nah, it's all love, baby. It's all love.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, no doubt. Mr. International. So we had a conversation offline about doing a show on the unpacking the fine art of black male bashing.
Right.
What led to you deciding that you wanted to do a show on this topic?
No, because there's a lot of that going on, and I think in this space there isn't enough men with platforms to really out there that could properly defend us.
Right.
And then with that being said, you have a lot of black men who I don't want to say encourage, but who what's the word I want to use, Lumumba? Come on, you the guy with words.
Here we go.
Who I don't want to say no, for real though, for real, seriously, because I want to, we're gonna jump into your article too. I don't want to say encourage, but they pander. Here we go, pander.
Okay, that's a good.
They pander to a lot of these platforms that take shots at at black men. So
right, and if I could, I think part of it is, and if we could keep it a buck, a lot of black men nowadays, unfortunately, and these oftentimes are based on issues that are outside of our control. Particularly, we talk about the family court system. A lot of black young men aren't being raised by their fathers, right? And so they grow up in this type of genocracy, this type of gendered feminist narrative that black men ain't ish. So I've come across black men who aren't even trying to pander; they actually believe the propaganda about themselves.
Exactly. Right.
Right. And as you know, when you're dealing with indoctrination, not to say you've been indoctrinated, but I know as a worldly man, as a scholarly man, as a man who, of course, went to and matriculated through the University of Georgia, you saw individuals who had drunk the Kool-Aid.
I would say this though, not on this level. I don't think I've never seen it on this level like I did back when I was in school.
Got you. Okay, understood. And part of that is, of course, this was closer to the 99 and the 2000.
Yeah, so right? I started Georgia UGA, the UGA. Hold on, let me show you something real quick.
We don't need that. We don't need that.
The UGA Bulldogs, the Georgia Bulldogs, and see this. Hold on, this second trophy right here from 2023 or 2023 national championship. We got this trophy. Right. All right. By beating y'all. Just want to put it on record.
And that's love. That's love, brother. What most people don't know is that you all have 2 trophies to cover up 2 DUIs. So we're not going to get into Alcoholics Anonymous. So, I mean, y'all should be winning the trophy for all those damn bodies y'all collected, but we're going to be respectful, okay?
Oh, man,
right? So we're going to be respectful here. But once again, you're watching Lumumba Speaks.
Hold on. Bodies. Wasn't Maurice Claret sneaking AK-47s and AR-15s and machine guns?
Yes, sir.
Doing airport selling. Was he
But in the defense of the Ohio State University's football team and athletic department, when Maurice Claret was engaging in that behavior, he had already been dismissed and removed from the university for at least 2 years. So he was a civilian on his own at the time. He had no official position, nor did he represent the Ohio State University in any capacity.
Okay.
So a little bit different there. But once again, family, you're watching Lumumba Speaks here on YouTube with the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. International himself, the jet-setting Pan-Africanist that is, of course, Prince Donna Zamir of Search for Uhuru. If you're watching, make sure you hit the subscribe and the like button. We're doing a dual broadcast between, of course, Lumumba Speaks and Search for Uhuru. So we're going to go over some ground rules. The link is in the chat. The link to my article on Medium, The Fine Art of Black Males Bashing, is in the description. So you could click on that, read the article. Make sure you follow me on Medium. But ground rules here on Lumumba Speaks, very, very quickly. Diversity of thought is welcome. So irrespective of you on the left, you're on the right, or you're right down the middle, like I wish that damn field goal kicker was in the damn Peach Bowl, you're welcome to be part of the conversation here. No racial evidence of any kind are allowed here at Lumumba Speaks. This is a site of Black empowerment, a space for Black empowerment, and we believe in the 3 N's of Black power that are self-respect, self-defense, and of course self-determination. So we want to respect ourselves as Black people, as people of African descent, as African people, and not use any racial evidence to describe described by people irrespective of what their perspective is. Number three, facts over feelings. So if someone comes in, provides a dissenting opinion, we want you to attack the argument and not the person. We don't want to engage in ad hominems. We want you to attack the argument and not the person. And then last but not least, no fundamentally false statements. So you may have your opinion. And I always give an example. An opinion would be you believe LeBron James is better than Michael Jordan. Hey, that's your opinion. But if you were to state that Michael Jordan only won 2 championships, that would be a fundamentally false statement.
Right.
So you can have your opinion, but no fundamentally false statements. Once again, this is my platform, and my reputation is on the line. And I don't want to be known as someone who allows people to disseminate false information on my platform. And then last but not least, our mission here at Lumumba Speaks is neither to exonerate or vilify, but simply to challenge conventional wisdom regarding what has previously been accepted as fact. And so today we're going to be challenging what has previously been accepted as fact. And that is, of course, one of the latest iterations of black male bashing, which came from a rather unlikely source. The Prince of Pan-Africanism, he calls himself Papa, Dr. Umar Johnson, who on the podcast with the Daily Rap Crew stated that black men were responsible for the complicated problems in the black community, ranging from black women's poor choice in men, hereditary and liking recalcitrant demeanors, and seemingly loquacious sexual desires. So with that being said, I'm quite sure you've seen the snippet of Dr. Umar Johnson making his comment.
Well, I guess if you could play it for everyone who hasn't.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Some people may not have seen. So let me pull that up very quickly, and then we could get the ball rolling. All right. I think it was rather ludicrous, but hey, that's just me, right? So let's go here, and let me see here. Give me 1 second, family. I can bring this up. Yes, gotcha. All right. Okay. Share screen. Here we go.
There's plenty in absolutely. So why not teach that same rhetoric to our women? Like, if you feel like
tell sisters all the time go to Africa. So I know sisters who marry. I just spoke with her sister. She invited me to the wedding. She just married a brother from the continent.
So, but instead of saying they will never get married,
I'll take sisters to Africa who married brothers they met in Africa.
Right.
So yeah,
I think there's plenty. I think there's obviously plenty of black men,
yes,
and black women. So
and what I also tell black women, if you're going to go get you an African man from the continent,
right,
you're going to have to understand that the way in which you talk to black men in America will not be tolerated over there.
But it's not tolerated here. That's what we're trying to tell them.
Well, over here, I want to say this to us, though, because we try to act like the way sisters treat us doesn't have a history that we are not at least partly responsible for. Let's be honest. The black woman has had to hold down the black house by herself, although imperfectly. She's had to do it by herself since the mass incarceration of black males began in the 1970s. You understand me? Most of our children are raised by a single mother right now. And it has been that way for about 50 years. So when a sister says, I don't need a man, because she couldn't find one strong enough to hold her down. Or when you meet a woman and you say, sister, I'm strong enough to be your man. You ain't got to work or you ain't got to pay the bills or whatever. Pull back. I got you. And she can't do it because all the other men before you who disappointed her. So what I'm saying is, black men, we got to be patient with our women because we created that personality. We created that. And then we want to act like we didn't play a role.
We have to be held accountable for their poor selection.
No, you have to be held accountable. No, you have to be held accountable because they have a poor selection. See, what you're saying, you're selecting a poor mate. And what I'm saying is they don't have much to select one, so of course you're going to end up with a poor mate. And why is she going to end up with a poor mate? Because we as black men are not raising black boys to be the men that our women need. We are not. They out there killing themselves right now. What we doing about it? Unemployed black males, what we doing about it? Pants sagging, weed smoking, what we doing about it? Black men are not raising black boys to be the men our community needs. That is 100% our fault. What I'm saying is she got a right to be angry with us. She got a right to be angry with us. We have not been on our job as black men. If the men are the providers, what have we been providing for our community? I'm not speaking you individually.
Yes.
Because you may be a damn good father. You may be a damn good father. You may be a damn good father, but guess what? What are we doing for the community? What are we doing for the children who don't have a father? You don't think the black woman got a right to be angry when she's been raising 2/3 of the kids by herself for 50 years? And the minute she raised her voice, we say she's not humble enough? She had to become masculine to survive the rape, the molestation, the domestic abuse. Are you telling me you can't see how we created that?
I understand that, but she needs
If
to
we
be
was
more
loving
selective.
our women and taking care of our women, do you think she would be like that? That personality has a history.
If she's picking Pookie and Ray Ray instead of
You're making her a scapegoat.
No, she's picking a scapegoat.
No.
There's good
Can I ask you a
quality
question?
men that they ignore.
Why she even got it? Why is there even a Pookie in the selection?
You gotta ask her that.
No. I'm gonna tell you why there's a Pookie in the selection.
What?
Because black men have abandoned black boys and have allowed social media, white media, athletes, and rappers to raise them. That's why she with Pookie. If we never allowed Pookie to develop, she would not have a Pookie. If we're going to be men, the first thing we got to do is take responsibility for why our women feel the way they feel.
I can hear that.
I'm not saying that they're right to disrespect, because even if a woman disrespects me, right? That still don't give me a right to disrespect her, because she's still the queen of the community. Even if she's not acting like it, I'm going to give her that respect. But when I hear
I was gonna say, Lumumba, you gotta unmute yourself. You're muted.
Family, so I think we all saw that. Absolutely ridiculous, right? Babble. Very quickly, I put the link to my article on Medium in the chat. If you could,
you might as well read the article too.
Well, you're right about that. Absolutely.
Yeah,
you could get into it. Absolutely. Share here. Here we go. So once again, family, the link to my article is on Medium. I'm going to be actually writing some content on Medium on a regular basis now. So if you could follow me on Medium, that'd be greatly appreciated. The fine art of black male bashing. In 1994, political analyst and media critic Dr. Earl Afari Hutchinson wrote a book entitled The Assassination of the Black Male Image, in which he offers a searing and controversial indictment of America's attitudes towards black men. The black male image, Hutchinson opined, has been battered, maligned, and assaulted by academics, the press, and Hollywood, as well as by some black rappers, comedians, feminists, filmmakers, and novelists, many of whom he accuses of reinforcing and profiting from the ethnic and sexual stereotypes imposed on black men. I agree with Hutchinson's fulmination against the public abasement of the black male image, as notions of incontrovertible and congenital pathological black male behavior are arguably one of the foundational myths of American folklore. This myth was rooted in the time-resistant half-truths and lies and croissants during the Arab and European conquest of Africa, nurtured during the Holocaust of enslavement in the Americas, and artfully refined during the nadir of Jim Crow segregation. Today, these myths are promoted and disseminated by a wide range of respectable talking heads, ranging from smug academics, no pun intended, intersectional feminists, talk show hosts, comedians, and relationship gurus that profit from the lucrative cottage industry of black male bashing. The latest iteration of black male bashing came from an unlikely source, the Prince of Pan-Africanism, Dr. Umar Johnson. Johnson on the Daily Rap Crew podcast engaged in his usual brand of audacious bluster and bravado, yet with a caveat. He blamed black men for the cavalcade of problems in the black community, ranging from black women's poor choice and men that purported harridan-like and recalcitrant demeanors and seemingly succubus sexual desires. Johnson's illustrious and incandescent opprobrium regarding black men's presumed arrested development is not rooted in an objective overview of black men's perceived shortcomings, successes, or failures. It is rooted in black misandry. Black misandry is an exaggerated pathological aversion towards black males that are created and reinforced in societal, institutional, and individual ideologies, practices, and behaviors. This misandry includes scholarly ontologies, axologies, and epistemologies that people use, similar to black misogyny or aversion towards an oppression of black women. Black misandry exists to justify and reproduce the subordination and oppression of black males while concomitantly erecting edifices of racial and gender inequality. Moving forward, tell Dr. Umar Johnson and all that did speak ill of black men to stick to the facts and not the hype. Black misandry will not be tolerated. So,
well written, straight to the point.
Appreciate it. So these are some of the issues that we're looking at. I would like to unpack some of the Dr. Umar Johnson's comments. First and foremost, he stated that black men have abandoned black boys. One, we know that this isn't true, right?
Yeah. What is the CDC?
Right, but that's what I was about to get to.
Okay.
The CDC did a study showing that black men in America who are not in the home with their children are more involved with the raising and rearing of their children than men of any other racial ethnic group in America. And I don't believe that the CDC is out here seeking the cape or for black men. I don't think they're doing that, right? Number two, he talks about why is there a Pookie array? Well, what Dr. Umar Johnson is doing is he's searching for what you're searching for, a Uhuru. He's searching for a utopia, right? Because in any community, going all the way back to antiquity, right? We're talking about Mesopotamia, Nile Valley, Indus Valley, the earliest civilizations, there were criminal justice codes. Why? Because you're going to have individuals who are engaging in deviant behavior. This is a reality, right? He talks about black women not having a good stock to choose from. Completely false. The majority of black men are what? In the middle class. The majority of black men are single with no children, according to blackdemographics.com. Black demographics for black people, by black people. Black demographics is a reputable source of information about black people, and it's been cited by CNN, the New York Times, and the Washington Post. So once again, these are talking points. And one of the things I've noticed, because I actually reached out to Umar Johnson, I texted him, I called him, I sent him an email, said, come on the show, let's unpack this. But what I've noticed is he seems to only...
He won't come on unless you pay him, from what I understand.
Well, I've been told that as well. But also, he tends not to come on channels or have conversations with individuals that can provide an actual intellectual pushback. Right? So something that I've noticed, if you are on the same level of intellectually, can actually push back against a lot of the rhetoric, because here's the reality. When you're in the real world, people don't want empty rhetoric. They want solutions. They want a plan. Right? And so once again, he talks about black women having to become masculine. Harriet Tubman was a freedom fighter. She wasn't masculine. Yaa Santawa was a freedom fighter. She wasn't considered masculine. Queen Mother Moore in Jamaica, the only national heroine in Jamaica, leader of the Maroons, was a freedom fighter. She wasn't considered masculine, right? So this connotation that if black women are engaging in the black radical tradition of audacious self-assertion, somehow that makes them masculine, is a misnomer. More so, if we really want to go even deeper and unpack, he talks about we created that identity, we created that behavior, we created that mindset. That's completely false. The concept of black women being what's known as a sapphire comes from the TV show Amos and Andy, right? We had nothing to do with that. So once again, from a historical standpoint, from a factual standpoint, he is way off the mark. Right. And so I think that's why it's important that we have these conversations to push back. Many people say, well, why do you care what other people think about you? I tend not to, but I also am familiar with the concept of a ethnic image. Now, you worked in sales, you worked in corporate America. I'm quite sure you had some crossover with the marketing department. And so the ethnic image plays a huge role as into why black men have the highest level of, guess what? Employment discrimination, because of the belief, the stereotype, the misandric stereotype that black men are inherently violent, and prone to criminality, right? So we have to push back against these type of misandric type of microaggressions, because they can actually affect our livelihoods and our life possibilities.
Cool. Let's you want to throw the link in the chat room?
Absolutely. We're gonna throw the link in the chat, get some brothers and sisters to tap in. Once again, you're watching Lumumba Speaks, and search for Who. Make sure you subscribe, like, and share both channels. Make sure you follow me on Medium as well. I'll put the link to the chat, to the article on Medium in the chat as well.
All right, guys, click on that link and tap in. Join the conversation.
Tap in. We got a Buckeye putting in work with a Bulldog. Doesn't happen much, but we're doing it today. Doesn't happen much, but we're doing it today.
Hey, Lumumba, is it okay if we go to a commercial break real quick?
Sure, please, no problem.
Like 1 minute.
Uh-huh.
All right, cool, guys. We'll be right back. Click on that link and add to the conversation. Yeah, I guess on my end I can't play the commercial, but it's all good.
Okay. Well, family, the link is in the chat. Make sure you tap in, be part of the conversation. So when you first heard the comments by Dr. Umar Johnson, what came to mind?
No, I mean, well, you understand, Lumumba, in the conscious community, there's always been this level of pandering and simping. Well, I don't want to say simping, but somewhat, but pandering to women in the
This is true. This is true.
in the community. You know, I mean, no matter what. So I'm not surprised. It was never in the community. It's never a of course we're going to hold the men accountable. We also have to hold the women accountable as well. Like that just doesn't really exist in the community.
And here's the thing, and when you bring that, that's a great point. When we talk about traditional African culture, so we're talking about African culture, West Central Africa, prior to European incursion on the continent, prior to Arab incursion on the continent, or even while Arabs were there. We find that the men were responsible for holding the men accountable for their behavior, and the women were responsible for holding the women accountable, right? We're talking about rite of passage. The women were responsible for bringing putting the women through a rite of passage and initiating them into a womanhood in the community. So once again, from his perspective, the perspective that he's providing is rather Eurocentric, which is of course rather ironic for someone who purports to be a Pan-Africanist.
Exactly, guys. Call in, click on the link, and add to the conversation.
Add to the conversation.
We're discussing Lumumba on here.
Right, the fine art of black male bashing, and of course we could even unpack if you all are familiar with the concept of misandry. I wasn't familiar with the concept of misandry until I got into my doctoral program, and I actually had some individuals telling me, "Hey, you're going to experience this," and I'm like, "I get out of here. I'm going to O State. Throw that block O up, OHIO," and it was about a month in the program. I was, "Hey man, I was on the phone. Can you talk? You got a minute?" It was a real issue. Your mere presence is seen as problematic, and so oftentimes, unfortunately, what I've seen. I even had a professor once tell me you should change who you are to make other people feel comfortable when you enter a room.
Wow.
And I said, well, hold on. I said, but let's unpack that. This is how you so let's unpack that. I say, well, if I did that, I wouldn't have an identity. I would be the chameleon from Spider-Man the animated series. Right, so we see these type of expectations being placed on black men that aren't placed on other men in the community. And here's the other issue: you were in college. I'm quite sure you saw this, even though you were on the football team and you were in track. Shout out to Higher Learning. I watched that. I had my daughter watch that movie with me this morning because she's wanted to go to college. So I said, let's take a look at this, and so on and so forth. So you're gonna be Omar Epps very quickly,
okay,
right?
Omar Epps, okay,
right. But one of the things that we would see, and I saw this in college, was a lot of black women choosing not to be open to the overtures of the black men on campus who are about their business, getting good grades, focusing on developing their careers. They would go for the guys who went to school sometimes, who didn't. Guys who were adjacent to the campus but didn't actually go to school. I saw these things myself. I recall when I was working as an intern at the Black Culture Center, there was a young lady and she was talking about how all these N-words, she's dating these N-words and they ain't ish. And I said, well, maybe if you dated a man, you wouldn't have that problem.
Right.
And so we see that oftentimes water rises to its natural level. Oftentimes if you see women who are dealing with men of that ilk, it's because that's what they're comfortable with. Mm-hmm. Right? Mr. Sandman. Go right ahead, brother.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. I believe that you and Dr. Umar Johnson are correct in your assumptions about things because, other groups of human beings, the Caucasian and the Arab, they have played a part in the destruction of the black family in the United States of America. But however, you as men, because we live in a world where the species of the Homo sapien, the human, is so patriarchal, it's only the responsibility of the patriarchy to fix the situation. You see what I'm saying? So if we were hyenas, so to speak.
Real quick, brother, I'm gonna push back. And the reason why I'm pushing back, and I understand patriarchy, but from an African cultural standpoint, the women are responsible for the women's behavior and the men are responsible for the men's behavior. And I gave the example that in a traditional African culture, the women were the ones who created the rite of passage program. initiated the young girls into rite of passage, and then what? Initiated them into womanhood when they successfully matriculated through said rite of passage program. So from an African culture standpoint, the women are responsible for women's behavior, and the men are responsible for men's behavior.
Yes, and by and large, all cultures are similar to that, being that African is the beginning of all culture and all human beings.
Well, not
And
all
all
cultures are similar to that. European culture is not only very patriarchal, but also extremely misogynistic. So all cultures are not similar to that. You can say the same with Arabic culture, Arab culture.
yeah, but we all know that all cultures derive from African culture.
Yeah,
So
but they're
they
not similar. But that doesn't deal with the point I'm making, that in traditional African culture, the women are responsible for the women's behavior.
yes, and at the same time, it's up to the patriarchy to lay down the laws for the female and the way that they're supposed to conduct themselves. And
Well,
then
but
it's
not in African culture, not in traditional African culture. The women are the ones who create the laws regarding how the women are supposed to conduct themselves, not the men.
yeah, it's hard for me to argue with you on that situation because, of course, I'm not as versed in ancient or historical African culture. Which African culture are you talking about? There's several different tribes with different cultures all over the continent. Which
Right.
one in particular are you talking about?
Well, when well, the prop just use the term ethnic group rather than tribe, because tribe connotates something that is primitive. So the proper term would be ethnic group. And I say that pre-colonial, traditional African culture, what we find is prior to European incursion on the continent, this was the way things were ran.
Okay,
Yes.
so no specific
But
culture.
I could give some examples: the Yoruba, the Igbo, the Ashanti, the Akan. These are examples I could think of off the top of my head where these type of practices, that was the way the society was set up.
Yeah.
We see this in Central Africa in terms of Angola and what is now known as the Democratic Republic of the Congo as well. If you study literature on traditional African culture prior to European incursion and colonialism.
Yes, I
In
agree with
fact,
that. That's why.
Alado Equiano, in his book, The Interesting Narrative of Alado Equiano, right, his memoir, he talks about these very issues in his memoir.
Yes, that sounds like some good literature
Yeah.
to tap into in the future for.
And Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe.
Yes, another great piece of literature to take a look into African American literature. So that's part of the reason why I agree with you is because we were separated from our indigenous cultures, whether
Hmm.
we derived from the Igbos, the Yoruba, the Fulani, and then we were ingrained with our or told what culture to have here in the United States, which is some Anglo-Saxon type culture or Christian culture that we had to adapt to. So, but at the same time, being that it's a dog eat dog world and a very patriarchal world,
Correct.
it's up to the man to fight back against that culture and start his own culture, one that is more suitable for the well-being of his people. And up to this day, 150 years after slavery has been abolished, we have failed to do so to establish that culture as the leaders in the patriarch of the black family here in the United States. Maybe it's going to take us having to go back to Africa and getting reunited with our indigenous cultures, whether it be Igbo, Yoruba, Fulani, the West African cultures. But up until this date, we have failed to reestablish that culture back in
I would
the
disagree.
United States.
I would disagree, and I would tell you why. One, there have been a number of movements in African American history that have sought to not only reestablish ties but also promote African cultural attention in what in the African American community. The most notable would be, of course, Garvey movement, the UNIA. In fact, we see a number of forms of African cultural attention in African American culture. Right, and there are several books on this. One of the most first books that was written about, not the first, but one of the first was, of course, one on by Dr. Carter G. Woodson, the father of Black History, who created Black History Week. Then, of course, Melville J. Hershkovit's book, The Myth of the Negro Past, that talks about and highlights Africanisms and African American culture. But I think what we also have to understand, and there are a number of different organizations and initiatives throughout Black America that focus on what? African cultural attention. I can recall there's an organization in Oakland entitled Sisters of Nia and Brothers of Kuumba that focus on rites of passage from an African-centered frame of reference. There's even a organization in my hometown, Dayton, Ohio, entitled the West Dayton Youth Task Force that has a Juma Moshi Shule, a Saturday school, African Center Rights of Passage, so on and so forth. So we're doing this across the country. But I think what we also have to understand is that we live in a society that provides a number of freedoms, and those freedoms allow people to engage in whatever behavior they want to, irrespective if the community they come from states that that behavior is of ill repute or not. So the reality situation is in America, and I'm gonna come back on the camera. In America now, you could be part of a community that says, hey, your behavior is unbecoming. Your behavior is in contravention of what we believe is best for our people and our culture. And that person can simply leave that community and go somewhere else. And so that's what we're seeing now, to where if the community comes out and says, hey, your behavior is unbecoming, they just say, fine, I just won't be part of the community anymore.
Yes, I mean that's part of the juxtaposition that we're in here as African Americans in the United States. There's always a outlet for the people that want to buck against the system that we're trying to establish for them to go, and there's a lot of obstacles that are placed in our way with the assassination of our leaders and things of that nature, and the introduction of illicit drugs into our communities that has also played a huge part in curbing the trajectory and the progress that we could have made in establishing.
I disagree. I disagree with that, and I'm gonna tell you why. And Donis, I want to get your opinion on this. I disagree with the introduction of crack cocaine, right, in the black.
I do too.
And the reason why is because the overwhelming majority of black people
did not smoke crack.
In the 70s and 80s did not use or sell drugs. The overwhelming majority of black people did not use or sell drugs. A minority of black people used and sold drugs, not the majority. Now, if it was the majority of black people, then I would say, okay, you know what? I could give you that. But that's the minority. For example, when we talk about Dr. Umar Johnson talked about what? The rapacious nature of the carceral state, the prison industrial complex. The majority of black men are criminals. The majority of black men are committing crimes. And right, and the individuals who are committing crimes against black people, and oftentimes they are very violent crimes. So I don't know why we should be caping for criminals.
No, I mean, the majority of black men weren't, using and selling the drugs. However, that drugs being introduced into our communities brought down the value of the real estate, and because it brought down the value of the real estate in our community, it reduced the wealth of the black people in the United States. So the majority of the black men in this country we come from, or black people in this country, we come from the ghetto, and some of us make it out of the ghetto. What do? We move to white communities and we give all of our money to Caucasians.
I would disagree with the fact that the majority of black people are in the ghetto and are impoverished. I
said they come from the ghetto. We don't. I'm not saying that we are impoverished, the majority is, but the majority of our families come from the ghetto.
Well, I would.
No, my family didn't come from the ghetto.
I would disagree.
No, that's your immediate family. What about your grandparents and your great grandparents? Where do they come from?
I guess we got to define ghetto. No. My grandparents came from the country. They came from Terry, Mississippi, and San Angelo, Texas. They were in the country with acres of land.
Yeah, and they were very poor, right? They were very poor people, correct?
No, I wouldn't necessarily say poor. I mean, they owned houses and they had land.
Oh, yeah. The definition of a ghetto is a poor urban area occupied primarily by a minority group of people. So the ghetto would mean is that you come from a poor area in a city? Yeah. By definition, that's what ghetto means.
Well, what I was getting at is that redlining issue that happened in the 1950s, where the white flight, left the majority of the inner cities, and they left it because, they wanted to, and they got really cheap HHA loans from the banking system that allowed them to buy all kinds of real estate at really low interest rates with very low money down, which allowed them to establish all kinds of wealth. And because because the black people in this country were redlined, we were forced, a lot of us that migrated into the Great Migration into the inner cities of the United States, to make a buck when all of those white people left the inner city it caused us to who had to stay inside of the inner city. It caused our property value to plummet because all of the white people left the inner city. You see what I'm saying? So being that the property value had already plummeted because white people left the inner city, and then you add the illicit drugs on top of the lack of the property value, and then all of these major industries and companies leaving the inner city, to go to safer places where they have to
Well,
pay.
you're talking about deindustrialization
Yes, the black community in the
of the
urban
inner
communities.
city.
Yeah, in the
Yeah,
inner cities. So that the white flight, along with the introduction of illicit drugs into the black community, really caused us to take a step backwards. And I think we're in the process of attempting to rebound it, but I think we're at a teetering point where we might get to the point of no return at some point.
got you, Michelle, Sister Michelle. What say you?
Good evening, panel. How are you? Thank you for having me on.
No problem.
We're good.
My question, or I want to buffer a bit, is when you say that yes, vast majority of black people weren't engaged in drugs, vast majority of black people were not engaged in crime. However, we were affected by it. Even my parents didn't do drugs, but I had family members who were involved in that life, causing us to move from a certain area. It affected us enough where it did affect us. Even if you weren't directly involved, trust me, if you're a black person in the DC area, you had a family member, cousin who was affected by it, and it affected the family system in some shape, way, or form. So to say it didn't affect us, I have to push back on it. Yes, we may not have been engaged in it, but it affected the family system, therefore affected property. Reason why maybe I want to go see my aunt, because my parents didn't want me to know that side of the family because of what things they were engaged in. So I never knew that particular part of the family. So everybody has their story. As we come, as we recover from the war on drugs, it affected us. It was a good amount of us that it affected us as a people. So, and as I work in social services, and I'm seeing the effects of it in family systems. Because I live in the DC area, I have a lady right now I'm working with. Her second cousin, they want her to be like a foster parent for her second cousin, which she has no real ties with, but they're part of the same family system. But because they were affected by the drugs in the 80s and is the grandchild, so what they're trying to do a family placement, and she's like back and forth on whether or not she wants to take this child in because of some other family history. So it affected us in more ways than we choose to admit. May not directly, but again, the whole family system. And
Understood. And part of this for me is anecdotal, right? My personal experience, we didn't have individuals in my family who used or sold drugs. Well, I had one uncle who sold drugs.
Yeah, so see, I'm not saying you per se directly.
Right, no, but the point is, I'm saying that it did not have it. So the argument that people would make is that the war on drugs broke up the black family, and that's the meaning it removed the father from the home. That's the presumption that is the statement that people make. Hold on, let me finish. And so the argument I'm making is that's not true because the majority of black men weren't using or selling drugs, and therefore their removal from the home, if they were removed from the home, was not based on being swept into the net of the carceral state.
Okay, from that perspective.
That's the point I was making.
But from a holistic perspective, it did affect. Because some family members did not speak to other family members, or you couldn't visit cousin X, Y, and Z because of what's going on with cousin X, Y, Z. It affected us in terms of our connections. It did affect us on a holistic level.
Right, but here's the other issue, sister, and I appreciate you tapping in, because you provide that social work perspective. But like I stated, in every community, you're going to have individuals who are deviants. In every family, you're going to have an individual who is a deviant. Right? So these issues aren't germane to only black people.
It's not absolutely. It's not only germane to black people, but it affects us at a different level that other communities can minimize the effects within their families. So they can send their. I went to a drug rehab place, very fancy drug rehab place. It costs like $10,000 a month. How many of us can go to a drug rehab place $10,000 a month and it's not reported? You go into the local drug rehab. Your probation officer, we don't have the resources to minimize some of these effects on ourselves and our families.
Right. Well, I would say this much, and I must just speak for myself. I wouldn't want to associate or have any association with a family member who used or abused drugs. And no, and I personally, I would not exhaust my resources to help that person.
Understandably so, but however, because you've done that, your children may not know that particular cousin.
And I would argue and this is me personally, as you know, I'm a father. I wouldn't want my children to be in community or relation or connection with a person like that, if they were a family member or not.
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't. I would say good, right?
The social services says your cousin or your uncle's son needs foster placement, and now they're calling you for a placement option.
And so wait, let me get the question correct. You're saying that just say my uncle or I have a cousin or a nephew who is in need of foster placement because the parent is using drugs
or not able to take care of the child. Would you let that child come in and spend a few days until they can find somewhere stable? Because we've had those issues.
Right. So if the child was my niece or nephew, I would bring them into my home if that was my niece or nephew. Yes.
What about your uncle's child?
If it was my uncle's child, probably once again, but I would have to look at the family. But I would have to look at a number of issues in terms of the values of the household, socialization, because I would not want to bring deviant behavior into my home and have that, of course, influence my children. So there would be a number of factors I would have to look at.
But again, because we're using more of a Eurocentric system in terms of our family system.
No. This isn't Eurocentric for me. I have to look out for what is in the best interest of my children. So there is a young person growing up in a home that is dysfunctional, lacks structure. There was drug abuse taking place. I have to consider that if I'm going to bring that around my children. That has nothing to do with being Eurocentric. That's called me being proactive and providing provision and protection for my children.
Yeah.
That ain't got nothing to do with no European stuff. And I would say this as a Pan-Africanist. If that's being Eurocentric, then sign me up. Euro it is. Because I have to look out for my children first and foremost.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think that, we're talking about
And I'm sorry, Alan B. I apologize. I don't mean to cut you off, but I want to make this very quick point. We have an issue in our community in which there is a belief that being Black-minded, Pan-Africanist, Afrocentric means that we accept debauchery, that we accept foolishness. I'm not into that. That's not my form of being Black-minded. My form of being Black-minded is what? Us working in a manner that restores ourselves to our traditional greatness, not accepting dysfunctional behavior, not accepting us devolving as a people and saying, because I'm Black, I'm supposed to accept this and you come into my home. That doesn't work for me. But I'm once again, Brother Allen.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you just said. I think we talk about what is Eurocentric and what is Afrocentric when we know when we started going on this line, when our women got out of control. And that was when, if you read the Moynihan report, it tells you exactly when they got out of control. It tells you exactly how it happened. It was surprising to them. And I bring it up all the time on this program. And I don't think enough people have actually read it and understand that
I've read it.
Yeah, I know you have. You've read everything.
I haven't read everything, but I read that. But I read that back in undergrad when I was taking a sociology class.
Okay. Well, I mean, it clearly tells you when things change. It changed in
Absolutely.
the 1960s. 60s and 70s when women made choices between that and feminism. When the CIA and all these other people started funding Gloria Steinem and Ms. Magazine and all stuff like that. This is when women got out of control and Black women became the guinea pigs of white feminists, and they pushed an agenda that was anti-patriarchy, as they always say, and it destroyed families. That's what happened, and we could talk around in circles about all this other stuff. When at the end of the day, whether you're in a Eurocentric system or an Afrocentric system or a Caribbean system, whatever, our women have gone out of control, and now everybody's beginning to see it. I was just watching a interview on the Breakfast Club with a presidential candidate, Vivek Ramaswamy, right? I think
if I can interject, Lamua, we got to do a show on that too. Sorry, Alan. It's just that, and the thing is, Alan, the girl thought she was so intelligent.
Exactly.
Wait, who is this you're talking about?
So Lamuma, there was. Go ahead, Alan.
No, yeah, okay, well, you can explain it. I mean, it was embarrassing. It was embarrassing where she basically got on there, and the Breakfast Club invited a so-called political expert to come on there and talk to a presidential candidate. And instead of talking about issues that affect the community or anything like that, she went ahead and went on and on about service and fifth grade and high school and all this other stuff that have nothing to do with anything. And she got up there with the attitude and talked to that man the same way that we're accustomed to being talked to.
So
I'm
gonna need you to send me that. And so there's a comment that says, so where were the black men to shield the black women from this agenda? Were they standing back with folded hands? Absolutely not. One of the things that we have to understand is that we live in a free society, right? America's a free country. So a woman doesn't have to listen to a man or follow his leadership if she doesn't want to. We could tell that woman, hey, don't do that. That's a bad idea. They're trying to set you up for the okie doke in the long run. And that woman has the right, based on the law, to say, you know what? I don't want to listen to you. And this is what happens. Women are free to make their own decisions. And as a result of making their own decisions, the consequences that they get are the consequences that they get.
Absolutely.
Then that's how that works. And here's the other thing when we talk about Afrocentric being rooted in African culture, because I'm real read in this. If in traditional African culture, if you engaged in what was considered deviant behavior, you were ostracized by the community. You weren't taken in. You were ostracized for a particular period of time.
We're not allowed to ostracize anybody anymore.
Right. For example, in traditional African cultures, if you committed adultery, it was a crime and you went to prison. You went to jail. You see what I'm saying here? So we got to understand that we're talking about traditional African culture. Traditional African culture does not accept deviant behavior. It does not accept buffoonery. It does not accept ratchetness.
We've created a culture here in the West where telling a woman, but particularly a black woman, anything is considered sexism. It is considered all kinds of different, whatever label they want to put on it. Your woman could be out in public with her whole behind out, literally.
Right.
And if you say anything about that,
you're the problem.
You're the problem. You're insecure. You're the problem. And that's what's happening. They don't listen to anybody.
No one. I mean, my mother even told me this. My mother's like, what, 60, what is this, 2023? So my mother's 67. And she was like, yeah. She was like, people, they won't listen to anybody. Won't listen to anyone. So what are you going to do with that? Right? And now we saw this with, of course, shout out to the Godfather, Kevin Samuels. I don't agree with everything Kevin Samuels said, but I think there were some things he got right. Any critique, or you're gay. Right? No, you're just a homosexual. Shame, insults, guilt, and need to be right. So what do you have to do? You have to what? Make the conscious decision as a responsible man to what? Say, I'm not even going to associate with people like this.
Right.
Right? That's what an intelligent man would do. You listen, an intelligent man can see when the train is what? Headed downhill. Right? So you get off before you don't even get on. Right? So, I mean, I think that's what a lot of men are doing now. Westside Mike says, exactly, Brother Allen. We already know we can't tell them anything without being called out about it, even if it benefits them. This is true. I've been in a situation before where I'm giving a woman advice that would actually benefit her. I don't have a dog in the fight. I'm telling you this to help you. She wouldn't listen to me just because I was a man. That's the feminism that you was talking about, Allen. Right? To where they're seeking to fight against the feminism rather than work with the fight against patriarchy, rather than what? Benefit from patriarchy.
And no group of people have ever benefited without having strong patriarchal figures.
Right.
They say they want men in the home and stuff like that, but then they don't want the men to act as a patriarch, when a patriarch should be considered an honorable thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the disconnect is. So anytime you have a philosophy like feminism, which tells you that they are anti-patriarchy, and you have cuckold men out here who who are buying into that and saying, yes, I'm against the patriarchy too, then you're saying as men, you're against yourselves. And that's not just black men, that's men all over the West.
Right. And that's a good point. Dynas and I kind of touched on in the beginning that a lot of young men are being socialized, indoctrinated, educated to work against their own best interests.
Amber Rose son.
Exactly.
Amber Rose son. Could you unpack that when you talk about Amber Rose son? And family, if you're watching, I just put the link to my article on Medium, The Fine Art of Black Male Bashing, in the chat. Please go on to Medium and of course follow me on Medium. Go right ahead, Sister Michelle.
There was a few months ago, there was an article where Amber Rose says she's teaching her son to be a feminist, and my mouth just dropped.
Oh.
Well, Amber Rose is that young man's mother, so he's already in a little bit of trouble.
Okay, why do you say that? So Amber Rose is the former stripper, video vixen.
Exactly. Lumumba, imagine, I feel sorry for children these days, because imagine, everyone has a cell phone now, including, these kids in junior high and high school. Imagine, you go to school, the children, they pull up your mom's OnlyFans page or Instagram page, and she busting it wide open. Like, how do you defend that? How do you defend your mom in that setting? Like, you could be fighting every day.
Well, that makes me think of Superhead, where she went on. I think she went on the Tyra Banks show and talked about how she dedicated the show to dedicated her book to her son. And she was like, what the hell? So Blue Sock says, did Lumumba just discover Tyra Curry or something? I thought Lumumba was an interactional feminist. I think you mean intersectional feminist. Absolutely not. I've never been an intersectional feminist, ever. In fact, if you meet people, if you interact with individuals who have known me in the 99 and the 2000, they would tell you I thought this way long before I even went to college. So no, I've never been an intersectional feminist. Absolutely.
Hey, I do have to go, but I want to add a couple more things really quick before I do go. If you want, the place where many men, including myself, got indoctrinated into this feminist doctrine has been college.
Yes, that's very true. Very true.
That is ground zero for a lot of this stuff and a lot of this thought. And yes, and in terms of intersectionality is a false concept. If you buy into intersectionality, that's where you begin to go wrong, in my opinion.
Now, when you talk about false concept, could you break that down? Now, I just want to let you know, my forthcoming dissertation talks about Black culture centers in the era of intersectionality and how many Black students don't view being Black as their most salient identity. They view other identities as more important. And so as a result, Black culture centers are now in this place. Like, what do we do? If the students don't come to our center, we ain't going to exist. So could you break down what you mean by as a false concept?
What the best example I give you is that, we had Black gay people in our community who were freedom fighters for Black people, and they never put anything above their Blackness.
That's true. That's very true. Very true.
So sort of like I'm not your Negro. What's his name? I
know you're talking about. You're talking about the writer.
Yes,
James Baldwin.
James Baldwin. He always talks about his Blackness first and foremost. We have groups of people in our community now who have been fooled by the rainbow flag into thinking that they are something other than Black, and that their Blackness does not take precedence over any other identity they have in America, and that's just a false concept. We are on our own. We know everybody uses us to get what they want and uses a Trojan horse for all their liberal causes, but we're on our own, and until we quite really understand that, we're not going to really get anywhere, in my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong.
Right. And very quickly, Jonathan Miller asked a question: what the hell is traditional African culture? Great question. So when I refer to traditional African culture, I'm referring to African culture independent of European and or Arab influence. So to answer that question, we're talking about African culture independent of European and Arab influence. Dr. Ali Mazuri, in his book, The Africans of Triple Heritage, he touches on that very distinction of African culture independent of European and Arab influence. And actually, this brother CME1 says ancient black culture is not patriarchal naturally. Actually, it actually is. We find this in ancient Kemet all the way to the great Western Sudanic empires of Songhai, Mali, and of course Ghana, where the societies, the individuals who ran the societies were in positions of power were men. So,
but if I may ask, Brother Lalumba, if it was, yes, the men may have ruled society, but I don't think it was as, how should I say, as oppressive as the Eurocentric.
Yeah, well, yes, and that's a great point, sister. Because when people think patriarchy, they are associating patriarchy with misogyny. The societies were patriarchal, but they were not misogynistic. So there's the difference, right? You can have patriarchy without misogyny. I grew up in a patriarchal household that was not misogynistic, right? So, and that's what happens. Most people, because of the European model, right? It's dominant in education and society, and even unfortunately, oftentimes in our minds, we associate patriarchy with misogyny. The cultures were not misogynistic, but they were patriarchal. And in fact, the societies oftentimes allowed women to, in particular, to have positions of power, such as running the marketplace. So there was some economic independence, so men could not completely control and dominate women.
All right, go ahead, Nigel.
Yeah, greetings, diners. Thank you for having me, and special greetings to Lumumba as a guest. Greetings to everyone on the panel, the chat, and to the viewers. I think I agree with Umar to an extent. I saw the video earlier on, where he was saying that, we the men also contributed to the problem. But empirically, if you are looking at it, the question is, can you say that the women contributed to the problem if they are the ones, according to him, taking care of doing the parenting two-thirds of the time? I guess, for what I've observed is that there are greater forces at play, so I can't exactly just decide to blame one side or the other. And in the end, to fix this, it's not only one side that will need to do the fixing. It has to be a kind of a feedback loop. When the men are doing their own, the women are doing their own bit, and then before you know it, this whole thing will become self-healing. Because I'm one of those people. If you look at the numbers, black men have done worse compared to other races in the world. Clearly, we have not defended our women, our children, our communities as well as other groups have. And however, the greater diaspora, that as I like to call, like the African Americans, the Brazilians, and all of them, they have a different kind of headwind against them. So I find it hard to necessarily to just start blaming them for what has happened to them. It's not entirely in their control, because the forces, the headwinds against them is just too great. We're talking about, because it's not only, when you look at the US now, you are not dealing with only the US, you are dealing with Europe. The whole Europe, with the power, because the power of the US also comes from Europe. And so you can't, if you try to fight the ones in the US, you are dealing with the entire Europe. That's why when Haiti did what they did, guess what? The French came back again. And they always come back. Americans came back again. They will never go away. And in the end, it's Africa that needs to be fixed. Africa is the base. And if Africa is not fixed, the headwinds will remain the same. And this is why it's good that a lot of the diaspora now is beginning to be aware of this and going back to the continent to try to form that, create another loop again, because the loop has to benefit both sides, and they benefit the continent benefits them. Before you know it, it becomes a strong connection, and when that connection becomes strong, it will be unstoppable, because we've seen how it happened with the other races in the world, like the Israelis, how they created their own nation and all the rest. It's not. They went through a hell. They went through 2,000 years of hell. And in the end, after what happened in Germany, you can see that very quickly they woke up to their challenges, and they went to the place they considered their home, which was the Middle East. And they've never looked back since then. And a lot of people hate them today because of how protective they are of themselves. But that is from history. I'm beginning to understand that now. That is from a history of being repeatedly attacked and being usurped, and you feel like anybody that comes at you, you have to reply. So we have to develop that kind of
Very,
instinct.
very quickly. I'm going to push back, and the reason why I'm going to push back against that is because when I interact with Black women from other countries who oftentimes are living under worse conditions and who have experienced far harsher forms of anti-Blackness than we have here in America, they don't behave that way.
Example?
An example would be a sister that I was seeing at one point who was from South Sudan. She was living in a refugee camp, and she was being sexually assaulted by the UN workers.
That is an individual case. The forces at play there. See,
right,
the way
but all I'm saying is this type of recalcitrant behavior, we find women throughout the world who have dealt with these type of things and don't, as a result, behave the way that we're seeing women behave now.
I think it's slightly that's what I mean by the headwinds. The diaspora, they are they are contained in an environment that is controlled not by them. That is the difference. The Sudanese, to an extent, the men, what the Sudanese see are their men. Like Nigerian people now see Nigerian leaders. They don't see Europeans. As a matter of fact, they think Europeans are nice. They think the entire world is nice to them, actually. They also, even if they see with their own eyes that when they go to North Africa or they go to Europe, they tend to treat us badly. But they don't see them as an issue like the way an African American would see, okay, the white people in the country treating them so badly. Nigerians don't see it. Even Nigerians in the US don't even see that. Can you even imagine that? Even when they see what the white people have done to this in their own fellow these Africans that arrived there 400 years ago, they still don't see the Europeans as the issue. So it tells you that what that lady is experiencing, the way she looks at it is that white man is treating me badly. That is on that white man, not necessarily a kind of a systemic issue.
So what you're speaking to is the lack of racial and political consciousness of that individual woman.
Exactly. The continent is not racialized like the diaspora is. That is the issue. The continent, they don't see Europeans as an issue.
That is true.
And that's one of the gifts the diaspora can bring to the continent. And that's why I feel like your voices are needed on the continent, because the continentals don't see issues. They just see it as, oh, we're just trading with Europeans. If anything, they love them. I am telling you. I just came off a panel where somebody that is supposed to be leading the group, that's leading a serious discussion about, fixing our countries and the continent and all the rest, was saying that he would like to die in Switzerland. These are Nigerians. I'm telling you, the way we think about things is not. We are not racialized enough to be able to fight for ourselves strongly enough. Because whenever I tell them, okay, you need to start fixing your security, that's one thing you've never done. They'll be like, you don't need that. You need economy first. You need this one first. They will make every excuse under the sun first. So it tells you that our problem is on that continent. If we start working together between the diaspora and this in the continentals, you'll find that strength will start. And I think there's a sign that it's already beginning to happen. But if we can tap into it properly, because from what I gathered, I think somebody testified to this recently, that most of these other nations, like the Asian countries, China, Taiwan, and all that they call it the self-exiled ones. They are the ones that fix the continent. That's the diasporas that left their countries. In the case of this in Africans and Black people, we have even a bigger diaspora that will not even, and we've never ever worked together. We have a bigger diaspora, we have a bigger continent. So how can it be that hard for us? It should be easier for us compared to what the Chinese and the Indians and the Taiwanese, Japanese, and all the others had to do. We have a larger body of people, we have a larger body of land mass. So you can see it should be an easy lift. It's just that we somehow are not able to come together and tap into that strength yet.
Got you. I don't very quickly, Big Black, you're in queue. If you could turn your camera on so we can see you in queue. Understand? Realize, make sure that you're not a scammer. Then we can bring you on. CD, what say you?
CD, you there? CD. All right, going once, going twice. Big Black, do us a favor, please turn on your camera so you can see who you are first before we let you onto the platform.
While we wait for the person, I have a question. I think one of the biggest issues we as people, Black people, we lost control of our mating system. And I think that's the biggest issue here in the Western Hemisphere. We've lost control of our mating system in terms of how men and women pair up culturally to continue the next generation in terms of dating.
that is an interesting point. Actually, I think it goes from what I see on the continent. It actually goes. Often say it to our women. I said, especially Nigerian women, especially the upper class ones in Nigeria, they tend to wear a lot of wigs, and I often advise them. I said, when you wear foreign woman's hair and imprint on your children that is how a woman should be, don't be shocked tomorrow they will rush to Europe and start marrying Europeans.
Right. Right.
That
I mean, if you're emulating that, why don't they get the real thing? Right.
exactly. You are imprinting on the children that is what is desirable, and that is one of the most fundamental aspects of life. Is far more dangerous than a million standing army, really, because what you are doing is saying my ability to procreate, that my desirability is in the other race. You've considered one of the biggest things, one of the biggest purposes of life. And when I asked them, I said, you don't understand how critical this type of things you are doing is. They don't see it. And that's how deep our mindset is, that we don't seem to understand, not to mention the physical inefficiency of it even. How is it that you are spending so much time, so much resources, wearing some other person's hair when the other person doesn't have to do that? Do you know the competitive advantage you just granted them? They don't have to bother with that. They just have to comb their hair, and that's the end of it. So we spend more money on our hair, we spend more time on our hair, we divert our listen, we encourage our children to go to other people. That is very devastating. We are finding so many headwinds that some people don't understand the consequences. This life is not a joke business. If you spend maybe extra 30 minutes every week on your hair, eventually it counts. It matters over time. It might not matter from where you're just looking at extra 20 minutes, maybe extra $5. Over 100 years, that will count for something, and for the entire population. And that is why when I encourage them to shift direction and start wearing their own hair, at least if you want to wear weave, wear it in a way that it's representative of the African hair. If you keep wearing wig that is that of a European, don't be shocked. And many of these our young men living in Africa today, including Nigeria, that they call this thing Jackpot now. What they are going to do in Europe is not only to study or go and make money. They want to go and marry white women. They want to go and marry white women and stay there.
So what type of pushback do you get when you state these type of things, brother?
They don't like it, of course. They don't like it.
The Nigerian guy where the white woman burned him up and the kids. Did you hear about that story, though, Jerry, brother 2
No, I didn't hear about it.
There was a brother, I believe, in Australia. I'll see if I can find it, put in the link. He was married to a white woman. She had a whole bunch of kids with him. They separated, and she got upset and burned him alive with the kids.
Wow. We have had, while I was growing up in Nigeria, I've had several cases where the white men decide to kill the Nigerian guy because the Nigerian guy did one thing or the other and nothing happens to them. At least these days, sometimes they even manage to take action against some of the people perpetrating these things. See, the issue is, I am one of them. I'm telling you, if I didn't know, I would have said, you was like in the theory. I know, I grew up like that. I grew up with the mindset that, okay, there's nothing like race from the point of view of that they really hate us and stuff like that. I grew up like that. I went to Europe thinking that, it's a good idea. White women are cool. All of the rest of it. That is how we are conditioned. Our leaders have not removed that shield, that this in brainwashing of our people, that conditioning of our people to think like that, because they make us think that Europeans, our leaders are always in their countries. Our current president, he probably spent the same amount of time in France as he has spent in Nigeria since he became president. So it tells you the issues. Our people have not separated themselves from the colonizers or enslavers. We've not done that yet. We've not even renamed Nigeria. We've not even bothered to rename it. Our judges are still wearing a white colonial headdress. And when I ask them this question, that why don't they say it's not the problem. But I said it sends a signal that you are taking ownership. But your children grow up every day watching a judge passing judgment on their people looking like wearing foreign hair. What kind of signal are you sending to your children? You are giving them, you are raising them feeling inferior. Their mother is wearing a wig. Their judges are wearing a white man's wig on his head when he's passing judgment on black people that don't wear a wig. The person that they are passing judgment on doesn't wear a wig. He's pure black. But the one that is passing the judgment is wearing wig. They don't understand subliminal messages. They don't understand conditioning. They just allow it to continue. And the only way they can see better It's when people that have lived with these people, they have become more racialized, are present in the population. Enough of them to enough degree. Because if I'm the only one telling them, it's not going to make that much of a difference. As much as I like to think that I've got a big mouth, but it doesn't make much of a difference. Because they push back all day. I tell you, they really push back. So then we tell you that, they still call European colonial masters. Even Europeans don't call themselves that name. So this is what I'm dealing with, and
very quickly, Hood Rich 902 says, "Wait, we can't come together because of weave." I don't think that's the argument that the brother's making. I think the argument he's making is that the weave or wearing of the weave or the desire to wear someone else's hair is representative of someone having some personal issues with their own blackness, and in which they're seeking comfort, they're seeking to be in community with or adjacent to whiteness or other racial ethnic groups as a way of somehow enriching and improving themselves from an aesthetic, intellectual, or social frame of reference. And so if someone is thinking in that mindset that anything other than black is better, there's no way that is someone you could build community with and seek to help restore African people to their traditional greatness.
How do you go into a board meeting and negotiate with people you've already internalized as being superior than you? How do you go into a board meeting when you worship every day and the Christ you worship is a blonde hair, blue eye, this thing God? The same thing goes for the Muslim. It's a very, very heavy lift to do. If you try to compete with that, you literally have a psychotic break, because all your internals, all your mind has been programmed to be subservient to these people, even if it's not conscious. Then suddenly, how are you supposed to just fight against that? This is why they push back too. They push back against me. You need to see some of the terms they used to describe me for saying some of the things I said. I've been called demon, devil, all kinds of stuff. They don't want to hear it. Because I tell them,
I had a woman tell me I was a coon because I didn't date women who wore weave. Right? So yeah. I said, so we see this type of concept of, hey, if you have particular values, and this is what we're going to, that we're talking about with the fine art of black male bashing, that black men, hey, they don't have the ability to, or if we do may have a decision, if we have a preference, it's seen as problematic if we're not going along. But I believe Brother Adam states is this feminist idea of what the woman is able to do whatever she wants, and it's never a problem. Right. And so oftentimes what we tend to find is that a lot of black men, and shout out to thank you for the super chat, this concept of what black men are just suffering in silence. The other issue, Brother Tunaja, then we're gonna pass it to CD, who's been waiting patiently, is I heard you state that black men aren't protecting the women and children. And this is where I'm gonna push back against that. 2 weeks ago, I went back to my hometown. I went to my parents' house. We had a conversation about 3 or 4 hours. And my mom said, well, your dad and I, we've been married 46 years. I never had to question if I was protected because I was under his leadership, his provision, and as it was on his protection. So once again, when we talk, when most oftentimes nowadays, when we hear this concept of protecting black women, right? Well, black women, a lot of these modern women are articulating is they want a man who is going to be a toy soldier who is willing to be sent on dummy missions. Because what that connotates that what? You are going to play the role as if you are Bruce Wayne. Because women who are under a man's leadership, they don't have to ask for someone to protect them. They're protected by following that person's leadership, providing that person, accepting that person's foresight and provision.
Yeah, I think I would let CD go. I would have liked to come back to that, but
yeah. Original man, appreciate the super chat.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Doing quite all right.
Man, I just think that the woman that was a social worker, she came on here saying that black people are suffering from basically white supremacy and dealing with the drugs and stuff like that.
White supremacy. Say white supremacy, sir. I didn't say white supremacy.
Oh, okay. We're dealing with the after effects of the breakdown of the black family, which is people on drugs and all this and redlining and all that type of stuff, right? And separation of the family, whether it's immediate family or distant family. Um, Black people, and I have to agree with that to a certain extent too. But black people are suffering from propaganda more than anything. They see things, they see things on TV and they they literally think that's what they're supposed to be. Now going back to what Tunaj is saying about the weave, it's the TV that people want to emulate. Black people are not suffering from white supremacy like directly like our ancestors did. They're suffering from self hate a lot of the times, and a lot. I don't know if y'all agree with this, but a lot of black people act like the white people who was in charge of the slave plantation. There was a lot of degeneracy going on in the white community, and black people act the same way. This is propaganda, and now you just have the TV, and they're taking on this minstrel character as a real life thing. You know, we do a lot of degenerate stuff in the black community. Now, the only because also too basically we're almost like in the black community with the people who's educated and the people who's moral and righteous, and you have these degenerate black people. It's almost like in the black community we are in a civil war against each other, and it's just not physical at this point. It's in they're winning. The degenerate people are winning the war because we can't push back like we want to. You know, we don't. It's the laws that's in place. We can't do anything to these people. We can't give them any punishment. So what we have to do is remove ourselves from the situation.
And I would agree with that because, and I would argue once again, and I think you're on track when you talk about propaganda. Marcus Garvey, if you read the philosophies and opinions of Marcus Garvey, I believe page 15 and 16, there's a section in the book where he talks about propaganda and how black people have been indoctrinated by propaganda that cause us to work against our own best interests, right? He talks about this. And I would argue that the degenerates, I wouldn't say they're necessarily winning the war, but they're giving high visibility.
Yeah, they just like the black community and the LBGT community, where you know, in like you were saying, that it's a small minority of people that are, you know, doing this stuff, right? It's a small minority, but they're just like the LBGT community. LBGT community only like 2-3% of the population, but they're getting the media coverage. They're getting the media coverage like it's the biggest thing in the black community, and it's not. It's not. But they don't want the people that are grown. They want generation after generation after generation to be degenerate. You know, they don't care about you. You're phased out the game right now. Only thing we can do is educate right now. But if the media keeps pushing in the media, and when I say media, I'm saying social media too. I'm not just saying uh you know, CNN, Fox, you know, all that stuff. I'm saying social media. At this point, white people don't have to do anything. We're doing it to ourselves, literally. The Kiki Palmer stuff. You know, if people are into it over this. My baby mom calls me, which is getting her a master's degree in psychology. She hit me up. If I did this Kiki Palmer stuff, it's nothing you can do. Da, 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 da. I'm like, of course it's nothing for me to do. It's for the kids to see. What about the kids? What do they see? You know what I mean? It's not about me. It's about the next generation. And that's all I had to say.
For me, if you ask the question whether black men deserve bashing, I think I probably would say yes. For this particular reason that all races in the world experience, you know, European imperialism, and we handle it differently. We handled it by compromising ourselves very, very severely. So from that point of view, you can say, okay, yeah, the black men probably, who knows, maybe the women contributed to it too, probably deserve the bashing that they are getting, because for their size, for the population that they have, for their physical strength, for the gifts that they've been given, yes, the results are not very this thing, something that we can be proud of. So that's where I will see this. But from what the professor said, you said something about in general is basically an anecdotal this thing example. That is the issue. It's just an example, but the bigger systemic issue that or trend is trending towards the women doing a lot of the lifting and having to fill in for the masculine role. I'm not blaming the diasporans for it. This is why, if you at the core of it, if you ask me, is on the continent. The core of the problem is coming from the continent. The weakness that, and this is why you can say, okay, you kind of devoid it from the diaspora, but the people on the continent are also the people in the diaspora. They were ones on the continent were moved to the diaspora. Maybe some of them also participated in compromising the continent and then moved to the diaspora too. So the continent is at the core of the problem. If the continent had responded differently, like the way the Chinese responded, the way the Indians responded, what you are experiencing now in the US will not be the same at all. It will not be the same. The other day, the Chinese, the Americans signed a deal with India that if Africa had just one of those deals, it would have transformed the continent. America was willing to share space technology, was willing to share quantum technology and microchip technology, was willing to manufacture war plane engines in India, service their aircraft carriers and warships in India. If Africa just had one of those, it would have transformed the continent. We are talking about strategic technologies being transferred to India because America wants to use India as a counterbalance to China. Why have we not put ourselves in that position? India is, in terms of landmass, is 12 times smaller than Africa, but the same population. So you can see why it's hard to just blame the women for it, because some of the things we were supposed to do, we avoided having to face them. The Chinese in the 50s were living on rations when they built the foundation for the nation that they have now. In that 60s, 70s, Africa, Nigeria was borrowing Singapore, some Asian countries money. Today, look at them. Because they focused on one key thing, founding their security. They put all their... When Stalin went to... when Mao Zedong went to Soviet Union, guess what he first asked for? What he asked the Stalin for? He said he wants their nuke technology. Can you imagine an African leader walking to Washington today and say, I want the best technology America has got. That America has not even tested. That is so cutting edge that America has not even tested it. That is what he did. Do you know the kind of gall, the kind of desperation that leads people to do that? They've just been invaded by Japan, so they were desperate and they were not having it. They were not buying any nonsense. Well, we African leaders, what do? We say we want debt reduction. We want for you to ease trade deal with us. Something that doesn't get us anywhere. Nothing strategic. Basically, trinkets, like we've always been doing. We've always been selling our people. Can you imagine Nigerian Africans? That's why I say black men, we have a lot to answer for. Black men in Africa, we are literally taking umbrella, taking schnapp, that's ogogoro, that's gin. They were taking little things like mirrors for human beings.
Real quick though, too, Daija, we're talking about African American men, right? Because the comments about Umar Johnson were about African American men. So that's what we're talking about here.
I agree because it applies to the continent, it applies everywhere. This same bashing you're talking about applies everywhere.
It stems from the continent. If the men who were in charge push back a little bit on our European masters, we may not be in a situation before. Because guess what? I have to go to work. It's not a man it's a white man that signs my check, not a black man. I mean, I'm being real. It's a white man that signs my check. At the end of the day.
So what's your point?
My point is that as a people, we've lost course as a people.
Wait, no. I'm saying you stated that there's a white man that signs your check and not a black man. What point are you trying to make?
The bank that I go to, everything I do stems from the white Eurocentric system in order for me to survive and sustain myself. So why then? So if I have a man, because I have a better understanding of what's going on with us as a people, so I'm not going to disrespect my brother. But the average sisters look like everything I do is from them, not you. So that's where the disrespect comes in.
I would disagree because we don't find the recalcitrant behavior when we were dealing with even worse forms of anti-black racism.
Yeah, a man in the African village get more respect from their women than we do in a city making $70,000 a year. In apartment note, only $1,000. That's not.
Well, but here's the point I'm trying to make. If someone wants to disrespect you, they will, hold on. Wait, hold on. I will let you speak. Here's the reality. If someone wants to disrespect you, they're going to disrespect you. And they're going to find whatever excuse or reason to do so. If someone is going to respect you, they're going to respect you irrespective of what's going on in society. That's the reality. So
I'm not sure that is entirely true, because if you look at it, there are systemic effects that are not in our control.
I understand that, but that has nothing to do with wanting to disrespect someone that looks like you.
I think it does, because this is my issue now. My issue with some of our conversation is that if we don't start looking at the effects that is going on a macro level, that's on a higher level, you are going to miss why the individual stuff is happening. Those are just symptoms.
No, because when you're dealing with modern women, they will always move the goalpost. They say, hey, you have a job, but you didn't start your own. I know, because I experienced this in my life. You start your own business, you're making money. Well, how? You started your own business because you couldn't do a job. You have a job where you're only working a job because you can't start your own business. People will move the goalposts. So you can't live your life based on what some individual is saying. You have to do what is in your best interest in the way you want to map your life out for yourself and then your community. Because modern women will always move the goalposts and make up a reason why they're disrespecting you.
Because the goalpost is anecdotal. The one you are describing is anecdotal. If a black man now is doing very well, generally they are very desirable. We know that. Yeah, they are probably one of the most. Are you sure? We tend to be desirable.
To Naja, the white men in America right now is getting their ass kicked by their women every single day, and they have way more money than the black community, and they're being disrespected every single day.
Another issue. We've seen videos where divested women have put videos on YouTube about they married a white guy who was living in a homeless shelter just because he was white. It has nothing to do with power or resources.
I think
even a white
they are mistaken. Okay, go ahead.
Has more power. I work with a white man. All he had to do is clean himself up, put on a suit, and it's unimaginable how privileged, his white privilege, even though he's an alcoholic, a junkie, he just cleans himself up a little bit. The opportunities that were open for him.
Right, he lives in society that provides racial collateral. Who cares?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And this is the issue. I live in America. I understand that America pedestalizes white women as the paragon of femininity. That ain't gonna change how I treat a black woman. I'm not gonna say, well, because white women have it easier and I'm gonna respect them when I respect black women. No, that means I'm a sellout. That means I'm a traitor and I'm trash and I'm weak as the fuck. We gotta make it plain. We gotta make it plain. I don't want to hear that bullshit.
Yeah,
because we talking about what some white people are doing. I don't give a damn what they're doing. I don't give a damn what they got, what they don't have, how they do things, how they don't do things. If you're supposed to be black-minded, that shouldn't even be coming out your mouth.
And we know white women are the worst group of women in America. They're the worst group. They are the most degenerate group of women in America. They have the lowest standards.
Tell me why are they the worst again?
They're the worst because they're the ones who's issuing in all the degenerate behavior. They're the ones on the TV talking about it's 30,000 different genders. I
got to push back some, and unfortunately, though, you have a lot of sisters who's starting to, usher this in as well.
But also lesbianism.
Yeah. But no, Dinus in California, bro. You know how California is. The number of white women pushing degenerate behavior is far amongst the black women. Black women and white women are neck to neck, but far as the numbers goes, white women are definitely ahead of black women.
See, you see what is going on there. It's like when you are going on a swim with some other person, and the person has got a swimming vest on, and while you don't have anything, and they are willing to go far into the into the water while you have to follow without any protection. That is what is going on. If our people tag along with them, we are going to always lose that fight. And the same thing is going to happen on the continent too. Europeans are doing what Europeans are supposed to do. As a matter of fact, if we are like them, we will be in a better place. They care more about their people than they care about us. That is what they do. And why should you blame them? Would you blame a mother for being a good mother? Would you blame a father for being a good father to their people, to its children and women? No, you can't. So they are actually operating the way any society community should operate. Indians do the same. We are just not doing it. That is the issue. We are blaming them because we expect them to do the wrong thing by their people. I can't expect a leopard that needs to feed his baby to spare the gazelle's baby because it's going to make it a bad mother, and the baby, our own baby will be gone. So you see what I mean? The way life works is that they are meant to care for their own, like every other group. What are we doing? We can't keep copying them. If you copy them, you're going to lose, because in our culture, they say you use your tongue to count the number of teeth in your mouth. You are not like them. You are not as equipped as they are. So you have to go from where you are standing from. And if you, our men, if we know what we need to do, same thing for our women, we need to start recognizing that and say, okay, you know what? We are not like them. We can't go on with this LGBT stuff. We don't have the population yet, and our community is not equipped to cope with that. You have to protect yourself against it. This is why other communities do it. You can't, like the Middle East, they are not going to buy any nonsense. They are talking about LGBT here. They don't buy it. You saw what happened with this in the World Cup. So the same thing with Asians and even the Indians in this country. They don't buy into all this because
wait. What you say? You said something about the World Cup. What about the
World Cup in the Middle East now, where they were banning, putting some restriction on the LGBT community activity in their country. So. And Africans are beginning to wake up to that. You saw what many African countries now are worried that some of all these feminist agenda, LGBT agenda, if they bring it to the continent, they are going to use it to depress our population growth. And they are beginning to push back against, and not to mention cultural misalignment. Because there's a bit of echo going on. So if that kind of culture comes into the continent, what is going to happen is that you're going to see a rise of single parent homes. And then when you have a societal problem where things are just completely misaligned, like the way you see sometimes in the West, we will suffer more from it because we are poorer. Like Europeans can afford to divorce their husbands. They generally are okay. We are not. We suffer because we are not as equipped as they are. That is the kind of common sense thinking that we need to start understanding, that it's not that they are doing something wrong. They are doing what is good for them. It's not about us. They are doing what is good. They can cope with it. They know they are at the top of the world.
I didn't hear anyone talking about what they were doing.
No. I'm just, when the young man said something about I don't know whether he's young, so to be fair, CD. So he said that the European white women are the most degenerate. What you call degenerate is not necessarily for us. To us, we see that degenerate. To them, it's normal. They can cope with it. When they need to revert back, they will revert back very quickly because they have the power to do it.
So very quickly, original man states Umar Johnson and Moist Twatkins want the 57.25% of single childless black men to clean up men for these modern women who have children with the Pookies and Ray Rays. Go ahead, Sister Michelle.
Can we talk about the court? You always blaming us women as speaking bad on black women. Have you been to the court system or to the police station and see how some of these people in authority talk to black men in front of the women and the children?
Wait, can you ask that question again?
Have you been to the court system or even a police station, especially when there's a situation and person of authorities are even speaking to a black man who's maybe a parent or a father figure in the household, how they address him?
Yes, I've seen that take place where they will go out their way to try to be disrespectful, undermine, demean. I've seen that.
I just
Hold
I
on,
was
real
in.
quick, CD. Hold on, real quick, CD. Sister Michelle, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I passed the mic to Mr. CD.
Okay.
I'm just giving you a little feedback so you can talk about this.
Are you getting we getting some breakup? We getting some feedback from
Yeah,
your
there's a
mic.
lot of feedback on your CD.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah, you got Lumumba's Obama phone. You know, his Obama phone.
Number one, I don't have an Obama phone, and secondly, Brother Donis, I told you stop hating on Obama. You know you voted for him the first time. You know you voted for him. In 2008,
if Obama came back today, we'll vote for Obama again.
I saw you in Georgia on a campaign talking about yes we can. So I don't know why you out here trying to do now.
No. Let me ask Dinas now. If Obama, if there had not been someone like Obama as a president in America and he emerged today, would you still not vote for him again?
What? Say that one more time.
If this was the first time a black person would have been president in America, that Obama never happened, and Obama came today, even with your consciousness today, would you still not vote for him?
I probably would have voted for him.
Exactly. So we all fell for it. We all fell for it. Hook, line, and sinker. Even if he showed up today, the same thing would still happen. So
and I think that's extremely unfortunate. I think that speaks to the lack of political maturity on a macro level in the global African community, to where a person can come along with the same song and dance, and we still are willing to support them as a candidate.
And Obama disrespected black men on an international level too.
I think it's deeper than that. I think what happened with Obama was that we felt that we've never had, as a matter of fact, globally, we've never seen somebody even half black that's run the most powerful country in the world. I think sometimes when people vote, it's not necessarily about just one direct interest. They look at the total impact it's going to have on the way people perceive them. So they will go for that first. Just like Republicans go for, getting rid of abortion. They don't care. They will vote for Trump, even if Trump doesn't believe in their religious this instant, but they'll go for him so that they can get to the Supreme Court and change the rules for abortion and stuff like that. That's how black people voted for Obama. It's not necessarily only about policy. It's about changing perception of black people around the globe. That's why they're going to do it again, even if it showed up today.
Let me
go right ahead. You get to tap out, but tap back in. There was a comment that you were going to make.
Yeah, you can hear me now?
Yes, sir. We get you just fine.
Okay, I was responding to Michelle's question. And yeah, when I went into court, because I'm a full-time parent, I take care of my kids, been providing for them. My baby mama haven't worked a job.
I just want to say, being a full-time parent, raising your children the right way, that is black power.
Yeah, and my baby mom tried to put me on child support or whatever. In Donis, he had a child support live stream, and I was talking to this guy. But yeah, man, these people was talking to me so bad up in there. Yeah, you gonna do this and do this, and I'm telling you, I'm presenting the papers and everything that this is illegal. Like, this stuff is illegal. So I got in there with the judge. They trying to talk to me crazy and everything. And so I played dumb. I just played dumb right along with them. I'm gonna do this. As soon as we got into court, guess what? The case had to be dismissed. Because when they're trying to attack you, you got to use your intellect. You know what I mean?
Right.
You have to show them.
And if I could, I was talking to my daughter this morning about, because she wants to run track. I'm like, cool, you could be a sprinter, whatever. But I told her, I said, if you want to be successful in life, you have to be able to be competitive intellectually. Intellectually. We have to compete intellectually if we're going to win.
Yeah. And they only respect black people when they can outsmart them.
Right.
When you can outsmart them, you don't have to go put your hands on nobody. You just outsmart them. And yeah, Michelle, they was just talking to me so bad, and I learned how to represent myself in court and stuff like that, and I win. And now they want to talk to you all nice, and you did a good job. You're not a lawyer, but you represented yourself very well, and I just want to say you should go to law school. But when I came in there, you was talking to me like dirt.
Right, and part of that is because they think we're all dumb. That's just the reality. You know, I've gone to court, I've had to, deal with different situations, and they talk to us like we're dumb because they think that about all of us, not some of us, all of us. What did Brother Malcolm say 60 years ago? What is a black man with a PhD? A N-I-double-G-A, right? A N-I-G-G-E-R.
Are you struggling? Are you struggling? See,
Brother,
go ahead.
why aren't we as a society, especially black men, take in terms of how the court, we need to have something in place, and which I'm in agreement, where the court needs to start treating our men with some level of respect when they're dealing with authority situations, such as the court system and the police system, because it is horrible. Because I'm in court and the judge is wholesale talking down on a father in front of his kids. No respect.
Well, and here's the thing, right? I always tell people, and I talk to my daughter about this. Part of respect is how you carry yourself, how you comport yourself, how you articulate. So I'm gonna give you an example. I remember there was a time where I was going through a divorce of my ex-wife. She made a false accusation, accused me of domestic violence, and I ended up being arrested. So I'm in jail. We do the video arraignment. And in the brief conversation I had with the judge said, excuse me, you seem like you got a good head on your shoulders. What's going on here? And I said, well, I'm going through divorce. I told my ex-wife, my wife, that I don't want to be with her anymore. She called the police and accused me of domestic violence. Right? So some of it is how you comport yourself, but also we know we're going to get a lot of pushback irrespective of how we comport ourselves, because that's the intransigent nature of anti-blackness. So we have to understand and know how to defend ourselves and stand up for ourselves, right, without acting like we don't have any sense. So I've had situations at my daughter's school where, the white principal, whatever, trying to come for me, and I clap back in a very extremely articulate and intellectual manner, and they shut the bleep up. So we have to understand and know how to clap back in an intellectual manner when people are coming for us in that manner.
That is true. You have to give it.
And here's the thing, and Brother CD, Brother Niger, Brother Dinus, you all can speak to this, because I think we all are fathers. I think you all have sons. I presume that you do. This is something that we teach our boys. Hey, you got to stand up for yourself, but you need to be able to stand up for yourself in a manner that's intelligent and doesn't put you in a position where you're making things worse for yourself.
Yeah, when I'm dealing with people at school and stuff like that, you know what I do? They won't ever think a black man is smart enough to do stuff like this. Exactly. You know what? I'll write them a letter.
Yep. No, absolutely. That's a great point, because there was a cool brother I got. He's from New York City. He was working in the Bronx but living in Harlem. And he had a situation on his job where there's some racial things going on. They were working at a hospital. The security guard was making jokes that they had guns, and the police officer actually pulled a gun on them. Crazy shit. So he comes to me and asks me, hey, what should I do? I said, first off, you need to get those brothers together. You all need to write a letter. You need to use legal terminology. Hostile working environment is one of them. Get the letter notarized. All of you all sign it, then turn it in to management. They said, and then I said, then you can make your demands, because you have something in writing and you're using legal terminology. They ain't gonna listen to your ass now, because now they're thinking lawsuit.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? I said, what's the outcome that you all want? But he said, we want to get this white guy, the security guard, fired. I said, now that you got your ducks in a row, you're gonna be able to go in there and do that. Got the guy fired. We had another situation when he was working in my hometown of Dayton, similar situation. So what do you want to do? You know what to do now. I gave you the template. Put that shit in writing, use legal terminology, get that shit notarized, have the other brothers sign. Now you can go in there and make your demands, because now you have something in writing.
Yep. And I'm gonna say this about Umar. I'm gonna say this about Umar. I'm gonna get out of here. Umar, see, instead of putting himself around, I'm gonna say this. Umar Johnson is one of those guys that's never liked to be around other guys. He liked to be around a lot of women, because the women not gonna correct him. If I want to
if I can interject real quick, I'm so sorry. I know it's rude. So when me and Lumumba started the show, I don't know if you were on. Lumumba brought that up where Professor Umar doesn't like to be in the room and be challenged by other intellectual men. And isn't that what you said, Lumumba?
Yes, the statement I made is that there's been a growing theme, and many of us in the community have realized that he doesn't tend to go on platforms in which there's going to be an intellectual challenge. So we're talking about the
Yeah.
Breakfast Club, and no shade to the brothers on the Daily Rap crew. But if you watch the video, and I think you said you had, they weren't able to push back with factual information, right? And so
Yes.
what happens is you're able to go out there, you're able to almost have a bully pulpit, you're on your sounding board. And oftentimes when you're dealing with individuals of this ilk, and I don't want to attack him, but the argument on the surface, these things sound good, they sound right. But when you begin to unpack, you find that this is a misnomer. He's engaged in a subterfuge. Because as I stated before,
to be fair to him,
very quickly, as I stated before, when he states that black women are selecting Pookies and Ray Rays because that's all they have to choose from, that is completely false. And it reinforces the white supremacist, black misandric narrative that black men are inherently criminal and dangerous. So he's using black male stereotypes to ingratiate himself with a female audience.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I think hearing him talk, I think he made a lot of sense. He went further. He actually gave numbers about the number of the heavy lift that the women are doing. And I can assure you,
wait. So here's the issue. Women are, we got to be honest here. Women are running the households. They're raising children. You don't have 80% of women in a community being single mothers unless they want to be single mothers. One of the things that one of the gifts that Kevin Samuels' platform provided, where women would come on that show and say, I was in a committed relationship with the father of my child. I got pregnant. He asked me to marry him, and I said I didn't want to marry him. Kevin Samuels, time and time again, would ask, ad nauseum, why didn't you marry the guy? Because I didn't want to. So women are being single mothers by choice.
It's not entirely accurate.
We know this if you look at the data from the family courts, from the U.S. Census. We're talking about here in America, who primarily in 80% or more actually files for divorce. Women. Men tend to stay. The women are the ones who are leaving these relationships where there are children. Women, I've even experienced.
I hear what you are saying, but if you look at it, like you considered the point earlier on that even Africa was patriarchal. The reason why is because men are the ones that found nations. They shape societies and they make the rules. They decide, okay, this is how my women are supposed to. Like the Arab man now will say their women has to wear burqa. The women will wear burqa. The one in Afghanistan will say don't go to school. They will not go to school. So generally, the men often shape the society that they exist in. And you can say maybe the Europeans, took control, or the dominant society took control from the black man. But the truth is, somewhere along the line, the black man lost control of his own community, and hence the women have to step in to do what they need to do to keep the roof of basically.
That is a misnomer. That is propaganda. That is not true. Women didn't have to do anything. Women
give me a reason why it's false.
No, I'm gonna give you the reason why. The reason why is because women chose to have children rather than get married first. As Brother Westside Mike said, Kevin Samuels had multiple, we're talking about dozens, hundreds of women come on his platform and say, I want to be a mother. I do not want to be a wife or have a family. That is completely false, and you can't give me any examples in African American history. And I'm a professor of African American history where men lost control of their communities, and then the black women said, okay, we're going to have to come in and do this. That is not what took place.
But Malcolm X warned about it. Malcolm X warned about it.
You can provide no historical example in the black community where what you just stated happened.
Let me explain to you why it happened. Malcolm X warned about it. I was shocked to see the video where he was warning about what was about to happen, where they were going to bring drugs into the neighborhood and all the rest, all the stuff that was going to happen. When they put those systems in place,
the majority of black people did not use or sell drugs.
Yeah, but either way, it disrupted the society and changed the culture to an extent.
Brother Nigel,
it changed the culture. So it changed the culture to an extent, and it led to what you have now. There was a breach, and we can't pretend as if that didn't happen. So if all those things has happened and the women had to step in to do those things, you have to recognize
the women did not have to step in. No, the women did not have to step in to do those things.
Grandmothers raising their children because both parents got on the stuff, or an aunt or great aunt had to come and get the child.
Once again, that is a minority. That is not the majority. I deal with the majority. I don't deal with the minority.
That's my point.
Yeah, but you know now, I've given you the idea, the facts that men often shape their society. So how is it that our own men are not able to shape their society so that the women can do as they want them to do? It's if you can answer the question.
It is because we live in a country in which women have free will. That's why. We live in a country in which women don't have to listen to men. We live in a country in which there's a thing called no-fault divorce, meaning a person could go down to the courthouse, file a divorce for no reason, and it's granted.
But other cultures are not experiencing the same.
I understand that, but you're asking the why. We live in a society in which women of any race have the right to make whatever decisions they want for whatever the reason, and they do not have to provide a reasoning or basis for the decisions that they're making. That's the issue.
But the Indian men were still holding their women down. The Chinese men are still holding their women down. So how do you explain that only our women got out of this to an extent anyway? This is, let's not pretend as if the whole society is collapsed. To an extent, I've now taken charge of the position of most men. It's because somewhere along the line, the men lost their position.
No, it's not. It's because women have the choice to be with a man or not. I would give you an example. My son is 15 years old. Up until the age of 10, my son was with me 5-6 days a week, and he was under my leadership. He was well-read, well-spoken. He was articulate. He was reading the New York Times. He was giving speeches. I mean, this dude was like the next goddamn Malcolm X or something like that, right? We had a court order, right? Because his mother and I divorced. His mom said, "The hell with the court order," took my son in the middle of the night and moved halfway across the country. It's been 5 years, 6 years since. My son is now a high school dropout. He is intellectually lazy. He uses drugs, right? So it wasn't because I wasn't doing my job. She had an issue with the fact that I was doing my job very well, decided to break the law. There's a warrant out for her arrest right now, and took my son. And since he's left, he's devolved. So this whole narrative about women are doing these things because the men aren't handling their business is false.
You see why I said before that.
And the reason why I know this is because I worked with the Montgomery County Fatherhood Initiative. I was in those in the family court. In fact, there's a channel on YouTube called Pink Book Lessons. Somehow this woman is able to get videos of family court proceedings or in terms of child custody and child support. She puts it on the channel. And all of the women that are on these videos, white, Asian, Latino, Arab, Jewish, Black, they all go on there and say what? I want this man to pay child support, and I want him to have no visitation with the child. These women are being single mothers and raising these children all by choice. It's that by choice, not because the man isn't handling his business.
See, you are looking at the symptoms, not the cause.
No, that ain't no system. That woman has made a choice, so she's not accountable for her decisions.
See,
we should hold her accountable for the decision that she's making.
Our choices are on a sliding scale. It's not as clear as
So I asked you a question. Should we hold a man and a woman accountable for the decisions that they make?
To an extent, yes.
To an extent.
Okay. Everything is on a sliding scale. It's not that clear cut. See, in life, you have freedom to an extent. Like when you are born now, you don't have the choice whether you're an American citizen or not. You don't have a choice whether you are black or not. So there are certain things that are not in your control.
But you have a choice. You have a choice to decide if you want to marry before you carry.
But the choice that the person is making was informed by choices that have already been made long time ago.
No,
so it's not that clear cut.
No, okay? because you have people today who still choose to get married before they have children. No, women have agency. Women have the ability to think for themselves. They are sentient beings. Here we go again with the lack of accountability. Thank you, Westside Mike.
That you have to understand the cause.
Let Michelle talk. Let Michelle talk.
Yeah, go ahead.
I agree with Brother Lou because I've met sisters some of these sisters have mental health. I think have undiagnosed mental health.
They ain't got no mental health issues. They do.
Or unresolved issues, and so they go to the court system because maybe they have some type of vengeance issue with the man, and they're putting it out on the child. In the court system, again, you also have a system that doesn't want to see families. You have to look at the bigger system at play. We really don't want to see families together. Because when you have families together, you're going to advocate, you're going to vote, you're going to demand more. So when you have families in disarray, it's a whole bunch of, stuff. So the court system is like, okay, if she doesn't want to, if she's saying this and he's saying this.
Yeah, but now what we tend to find with the courts, and of course, the Sisters Channel Pink Book Lessons, the courts on the siding with the women. They're like, nah, we ain't gonna just believe you. We don't care what you're saying. This man is gonna get his child X number of days out the month. Da 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 da. But the point that I'm making is that these women are making conscious decisions, not just black women, women of all races in America, to want to have children and raise them devoid of the father being in the picture. In fact, I could recall 12 years ago, I went on a date with a sister, black sister. She was and she told me in the first date that she wanted to purposely have children and then raise them without the father to prove that kids didn't need a father in their life to be able to turn out well. I said, check, please. Got the check, paid my half of the dinner, and got the hell out of there. I ran into her 2 years ago. So we're talking about maybe 10 years later. She's a single mother or two, and she said, man, this is the worst decision I ever made in my life. I'll see why you cut me off. So once again, these are decisions that women are making, and a lot of it is rooted in feminism, because feminism teaches that the man being present is actually antithetical to the best interest of the family unit in the community. So it's rooted in the feminist thought.
See, see, for even with amongst European women, they actually are more traditional than we like to admit. Many of them don't want to do this feminist stuff. They want to be feminine.
I'm not talking about that.
No, that's what I'm saying. What makes you think our women don't want that too?
No.
Actually, they just want to take responsibility as a man.
No. What I stated, I didn't say all women. I said we find this amongst women of all ethnic groups in America, that there are women of all ethnic groups who want to raise children without the father involved. This is a reality because I worked with the Montgomery County Fatherhood Initiative in Dayton, Ohio, and the men were Jewish, they were Arab, they were white, they were Asian, they were Latino, and they were black, and they all had the same stories. And our job was to go advocate for them and help them compile the case when they went to court, right, for their children. The same story. Hey, everything was fine. We had a great relationship, and she just said, oh, you know what? I don't want to be with you anymore. And then try to take the kids away and so on and so forth. And we know this is the number one reason why children, unfortunately, are victims of sexual and physical abuse. Mom leaves the father and then brings some random guy around the children. The
effects is different for all of them. When you look at it like, oh, it's happening to everybody, you are missing the fact that you could be the target of the entire thing. The effect is different for all of them. The effect that it's having on our community is more severe than it's having on them because they developed. Remember, they designed it themselves.
That's not the point that I'm making. The point that I'm making is that women in America, for various reasons, some of them are ideological in nature. Some of them may be rooted in misandry. Oftentimes in America today, irrespective of race, are choosing and wanting to raise children without the father involved. That's the point that I'm making. I'm not talking about the side effects. I'm just saying this is a reality now in America.
No, it's true. I agree with that.
I just literally, I was at the house. Me and my mom was at the house. My mom is from Louisiana.
I'm sorry, very quickly, CD, and I apologize for cutting you off, but I want to make this point because I had to go to court. My daughter's 13. I had to go to court about a month ago. My daughter's mother hired an attorney and wanted to get my parental rights and visitation and everything revoked. So we go to court, and the guard I lied on for the court says, well, your daughter said that she doesn't like to play chess, but you make her play chess anyway. Do you think it's right that you make your daughter do things she doesn't want to do? And I said, well, part of being a parent is you make your child do things that they don't want to do. You tell them to sit down. You tell them to be quiet. You tell them to clean their room. You tell them to eat their vegetables. You give them a curfew. That's part of being a parent. And the judge was like, absolutely. I don't see what the problem is. So I've even experienced this myself.
Man, that's crazy, man.
Yeah. And
that's crazy, man.
They said, well, your daughter said that you make her sit down and read an hour a day. I said, that's correct. What's wrong with that? Literally. Yeah. So I know what I'm talking about.
No, Tunaja. No, Tunaja. No. Me and my mom she's sickly. She drove down from Louisiana, from Shreveport, Louisiana to Houston, Texas yesterday to spend time with her grandkids, which is my daughter and my son. I woke up, me and my mom woke up, we had them all yesterday. We just woke up. Told my baby mom, yeah, I'm on my way in the few to come get them. I in a few, in the black people, we say in a few, meaning like 30 minutes to an hour. 30 minutes later, popped up at her door. She asked me why I didn't call and said, no, you can't see them. What you want me to do? To now to kick the damn door in and go to jail?
No, you shouldn't. You act responsibly by your family based on what you think is right. I think we as men within our community has to understand that things are going to get hard before it gets better. We have to embrace that fact because we are not in a good state, and no, the truth is no other group has gotten it. You see, this is why I said there are macro effects that we are not seeing. Because if you look at what I said it before, if you look at what the Chinese did, and if you look at all the countries that lost wars, because I am coming from the point of view of a Nigerian and an African, all the countries that lost wars in Second World War are doing better than most African countries today. Why? Because they understood that, okay, we have to put our differences aside and work together to build something for our future. Because they understand the consequences of not working together. But for Africans, what happened to us was that when they colonized the continent, they had 60 years or so to colonize our minds too, peacefully. And they walked away peacefully, and we didn't beat them out of the continent and build our own continent. That is why we are in the mess that we are in right now. And when I looked at this thing, there was this guy that said something about this as a theory that people that have experienced a catalytic event tend to learn how to put their differences aside and work together.
But to Niger, we find women of all racial ethnic backgrounds engaging in this behavior in America. So it has nothing to do with the history of racial oppression.
No, but what you are missing is that, and I said it before, the effect it's having on us is different. I gave an example where somebody is going into deeper waters.
I'm concerned about the behavior, the fact that people are choosing to do this. You're trying to. The
behavior is not the problem. Don't you see that the behavior is not the problem for them? It's problem for us. That for them, it's not a problem. They created it. You remember? It's like, you think the white man just decided to do it because the woman put a gun to his head? He knew he can take it.
Sorry to interject. Hey, Lumumba, I have to step away. I have an engagement at 5, so I don't know if I click in the broadcast, it just ends it on my end, or how does it work?
I don't. So what I think you could do is you can leave, and it was still. Oh, hold on. You could tap out. And it would still go on my end. I think you could leave, but if you hit end broadcast, I think
okay. So I'll just remove myself from the conversation. Then I guess when I come back, whatever's going on. But hey, I appreciate it.
No doubt. So what's up, Mike? You're here. You've been waiting patiently. Want to hear what you have to say.
Hey, good afternoon, brothers and sisters. I was listening for a little bit. I was in the chat, and I just got some things that just got me triggered. So I had to come on here and express, some of my opinions based on the topic. As far as where our people are right now in America, I think once again the lack of accountability towards what our women have chosen to do is still an issue as far as helping us resolve the issues that we do have to help us move forward. A lot of things don't come from just the system or what the lack of men do, because that kind of confuses me when I hear that we live in a society where women have the choice and the freedom to do things, yet when they do the wrong things, somehow the men are blamed. And yet I don't see how those two things correlate. And that's where, like I said, the lack of accountability on grown women come into play, where these women are the strongest, most independent, educated group of women, and yet when it comes to things that come to family values or things that they help that put down the Black community, somehow it's a man's fault. And I think that's one of the biggest issues that we need to start discussing and looking at, to where it's not, I'm not trying to bash, I'm just trying to call it out and be fair. You can't hold a Black man accountable if the Black woman has the choice to want to get pregnant by a man but not marry him. Also, they have the choice on who they choose to have kids with. Pookie, Ray Ray, Jamarquavius, that's their choice. We know these women choose to lay down with these men. So it's either going to come down to either you take accountability, you understand that you made these choices, or you just accept the fact that you do need men to help you make these choices for you, because you can't have it both ways. You can't do what you want to do and then still blame the black man for not doing nothing about it, when we know if we do try to do something about it, we're called misogynists. We're called out on that end. So, I'm just gonna put it out there like that.
Well, I think that's a good point that you're making with Mike, because what we tend to find, and I even mentioned this in one of my doctoral classes, how most women would say, well, men are handling their business, so we have to carry the burden of the community and raise the kids on our own. But then if the man says, no, I'm a real man, I'm gonna raise these kids, I'm gonna lead in my community, I'm gonna provide and protect, then he's patriarchal and controlling. So you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. And what it really speaks to is that there are a lot of people who actually don't want masculine man, patriarchal man in the picture. They simply want to put it on the shelf and use it when it's convenient. This is what I like to talk about, this concept of being black-minded when convenient. Because if a person was black-minded, you would not be having children out of wedlock in the first place. If you were black-minded, you wouldn't be having children with a Pookie or Ray Ray in the first place.
Exactly, Bakari. And it goes, right. And like you said, when it's convenient.
Black-minded when convenient.
Also, needing a man when it's convenient, like I stated in the comments, they'll go out here and get pregnant by one dude that don't want him to be the father, then go find some sucker to be a stepdaddy, knowing that, yeah, he's going to provide and protect, but he don't have full control over my kids. So now I get the best of both worlds. That's been a plan they've been using for decades.
Yeah.
And now black men are waking up to that, to where we're not doing the stepdad things no more, and we're advising younger brothers to not do it either. So they don't grow into doing that, because we know that little trope that they used to have, talking about it takes a real man to raise another man's kids.
No, that's absolutely ridiculous.
Come on, man.
My own mother told me not to be with a woman who has children. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 says fathers used to choose their daughter's husband. Women can now get abortions and support from the government. Courts destroy fathers' accountability like kryptonite to modern women. And one of the things that we even saw on Kevin Samuel's channel was how women would say, hey, my dad told me, don't be with a gangbanger. Don't be with a guy who's a criminal. Don't be with a miscreant. And the women would say, my dad gave me the proper advice. He raised me and nurtured me and loved me, and I chose not to listen to him anyway.
Yeah, I saw that.
Wait, what are we talking about here?
Not like
Tunaja, have you ever been to America? Have you ever been to America?
Why do you always say this thing? Why do you're making it sound as if I go to America, suddenly my opinions are going to change?
Tunaja, have you? Are you in Nigeria? Are you where?
I'm in the UK. I'm in the UK.
Okay, you're in the UK. Okay, yeah. So in America, when you take a man to the child support court or whatever, the government is incentivized in every. I think every $400, $200, they get to take $35, and that $35
they get a certain percentage. Yeah,
they get a percentage, meaning that this is like almost $1 trillion industry per year.
Correct.
They are, the government is in it, and also the women are in it. So they're not going to stop it. You have to know the law to get out of it. So you saying that, hey, you got to do this? No, you are the man that the woman is fighting to get to a bag, to get to the food that's behind her. That's what we're dealing with in America. You have to fight.
Let me add this. Now, I hear what you're saying. However, with all these challenges, you know what needs to be done to wrest power. You know where the money is going. You know their incentives. As a man, your job is to fight it. Let me say this.
And
other men have had to fight even worse.
Right, and how do you fight it? It's twofold. One, you can advocate. You can gain connections with politicians and ask them to put forth legislation to change the laws, or you could choose not procreate so that you don't put yourself in these type of deleterious situations.
If you don't procreate, it's extinction. Then it's extinction for your people.
Well, let's once again, as I stated, those are the two options that you have, because here's the reality. Nobody wants to have a child, financially support that child, or be unable to raise that child.
Right. Nobody wants to be in that position.
As a result, that child grows up and is actually what does harm to the community because they didn't have you raising them.
What is
And then you
most
still get the
important
blame.
is that the journey that started a long time ago, you are able to pass your genetic lineage forward. See, if you look at it from the point of view that just
Nah.
because I'm not involved, hold on. If you look at it from the point of view that I'm just not in it because I'm not involved, my child should not even exist. That is the wrong way to look at it, because you are
No,
just
it's not.
calling for extinction. You are doing exactly what the people that put the system in place want you to do. You have to see, other people have to do far worse. See, I said it earlier on. If you think this is going to be easy to get out of, it's not. Remember, the difficulty is already being inflicted. And I have this type of conversation with our people on the continent all the time. When I ask them, what are you going to do to secure your country? They will say, no, I will not pay a penny. But at the same time, by the end of that year, inflation alone would take the same amount that they would have used to secure their country. And just this year again, hold on.
That's also false equivalency.
Tanaja just don't get it.
What we do is that we tend to want to escape the difficulty. Our inheritance, make no mistake, we the men will have to be ready to do very, very tough things to survive it.
Such as
having kids you can't take care of is not doing a tough thing.
One mic. Tanaja. So how do you propose black men in America deal with this issue?
Whatever. See, I don't know the.
No.
Hold on now. Okay, you want me to propose? Okay.
Yes, if you are going to provide a dissenting opinion, which is fine because we believe in diversity of thought, that helps us have a more robust, intellectually stimulating conversation, also allows us to grow as a people. However, what I need you to do is you are going to push back. We cannot solve a problem with empty rhetoric. We need an actual plan.
Okay.
So can you propose a plan?
Okay, good. For me, if I want to propose a plan, I'll say two parts you want to go. You want to go one for technology, grow yourself so that you become important and powerful, and you also get important in terms of military or defense or whatever, security technology. Because when you become strong like that, now what you talked about earlier on, going to Congress and all the rest of the other stuff, you can have influence. When you have influence, you can shape your surrounding. All these things I said, it's not going to be easy. You have to do the hard work. All your young ones, you encourage them into technology and into defense and technologies. Once you get into even pharmaceutical, is something you have to go into something strategic, something powerful.
Right.
So that
Bill Gates got
one mic. So what is the strategy? Is what I'm asking.
This for me, what I advocate for our Africans is that from a very young age, we all need to start going to technology as a matter of fact. And then we have to start moving deliberately to industries that are highly strategic, pharmaceutical, defense, agricultural, all those areas, occupy them so that you can now have power and actually control it. Don't just go and work for people. Control it. When you control it, now you have a stake. When you want something done, you will get it. That's what other people did. And I say this to you, it's not going to be easy. They will fight you. They will do everything to stop you from doing that because that's what they've done before now. And you're going to need a lot of support from all the globally to achieve that.
Tanaja, Bill Gates and Elon Musk, Bill Gates, and Jeff Bezos got rammed up the butt the same way you will get rammed if you come over here and you do the same thing. You're not going to change the laws because you're going to fight this and fight that. No, Tanaja, it don't work like that. You're going to abide by the law just like everybody else is, and unless you know the law and know how to beat it, that's the only way out. That's all that other stuff. We know child support is illegal. We know, but you have to know the laws.
But you said child support is illegal. Can you expound on that point?
Child support is illegal. Child support is illegal because when you sign up for child support, let's like when you go to the hospital, you sign that form, right? That acknowledgement of paternity form.
Right.
And when you sign that form, that first of all, it's not an attorney that's giving you that form. It can be assistant, a nurse assistant giving you that form. That they supposed to read that thing off to you as a legal form. and they don't. So that's a breach of contract right there. That's already illegal. When you go up to the child support system, it's voluntary. It's even in their contract, it's telling you this is voluntary. This is, I think voluntary is mentioned like 30 times in their contract. Yeah, you're giving your rights over. You're literally signing them over to them. So when you sign them over to them, they have the power over you now because you didn't agree with their contract. But in reality, you don't have to agree with their contract. You just have to argue against the contract in that you don't owe them anything. I didn't sign up. And second of all, the second reason why it's illegal, because someone else went to put you on a debt payment program. So if I have a Verizon bill, right, and I say, hey, I want Lumumba to pay this Verizon bill, and they contact you and say, hey, I want you to pay this, and you be like, I didn't sign up for that. How do I owe anything to you? You know what I mean? And so now it's a third party intervener in your relationship with your kids, and that's illegal. The government cannot profit off you in family court. That's illegal. Other than your application fee to file to get into court, that's the only thing they can profit. That's illegal. It's so many. It's so they're gonna have to change child support though, because so many people waking up to it. But
Right,
it's
and
so
I would say this. I always tell men, if you have joint custody, you're more than likely not going to pay child support. You know, and a lot of people, they don't go for joint custody. They just say, okay, give me visitation. Right, so that's a major issue as well that most people don't know. But as you stated, the way things, and like I said, the way things are set up, you have, like my best friend, he had a situation in which his ex-wife all of a sudden jumped in and was just like, oh, you know what? I don't want to be married anymore. And I told him, okay, these are things you're going to need to do to secure your relationship with your children. And one of it was, I said, when you're married, you automatically have joint custody. So when you all had that interim hearing after she files for divorce, you need to let them know we already have joint custody. We want to keep it that way. These are things that a lot of men don't know. And this is why they end up oftentimes, unfortunately, getting the short end of the stick when it comes to dealing with the family court system.
Yeah.
Can I just add something about that Bezos and this thing? See, those things, it doesn't matter. I said it before. Whatever they are doing amongst themselves, they decided to pass the law. Remember, the people that passed the law are the dominant culture. There was a time 120 years ago, they were selling their women, their wives in marketplaces. As they were literally selling women, their own wives. So if they decided now that they want to give them freedom to share everything 50-50, is their convenience. That those rules, how many black men advocated those rules? How many black community say that's what they wanted? No, that's not what we wanted. And we are subject to the same conditions. We have to realize that and say, you know what, if this is not suiting us, we have to do something about it. And because what we need to do is hard, it's easy for us to just start blaming each other.
Well, no, well, that's not what's going on here, right? We're talking about the decisions that individual people in our community are making, right? Very quickly, Vanessa Johnson says the mom can't work and breastfeed. Stupid. Well, it depends on the industry that you're in. I work in higher education, and in higher education, they actually encourage women to breastfeed. Most institutions have lactation rooms all across campus for female students and, of course, employees, faculty, and staff to be able to breastfeed. So that in itself, I think is a bit of a misnomer.
Brother Lumba, can I ask you a question, please? And I'll pass the mic to Brother Philip.
Please go right ahead. Yes, Brother Philip is waiting patiently. Go right ahead. And if you're watching, you might have to go over to Lumumba Speaks and, of course, like, subscribe, and share. Sister Michelle, go right ahead. What's your question?
Thank you, Brother Philip. Your children's mother. What did your mother feel about her?
Well, at the time, they liked them. My mother and father, my whole family was like, we're very happy for you. And then, just 1 minute, and she was like, oh, you know what? I don't want to be married anymore. Bye.
What about Mr. CD, your mother and your children's mother? What was your mother's perception or sister's perception of her prior to having the children? If I may ask.
My mom, they liked her until they didn't.
Right. So, that tends to be the case. And I'm going to say this because I remember my best friend, when he went through his divorce, the things that his wife was doing, it was like she was a completely different person. And so I said, man, why did you marry her? She act like this. He said, dude, I'm telling you, she never behaved this way during our entire relationship or engagement or the marriage. Now that she wants a divorce, she's like a completely different person. And so I was like, man, I don't know. I don't believe you until I experienced it myself. Then I remember he called me like, see, you thought I was making this up, to where this woman was one way throughout the entire relationship and even the marriage. And then the minute you're not married anymore, she's like a completely different person. Like, I'm talking about in terms of personality and everything. Blew my mind.
Yep. That's because they suffer from propaganda. They suffer.
That happens with men of all races. Like I said, I worked at the Montgomery County Fatherhood Initiative. Men of all races. But Felipe, he's a lawyer, an attorney. I don't know if you did with family law, but if you had, some of the stories, it's like, man, this stuff is crazy. But Felipe, I'm gonna let you tap in.
Greetings, panel. Always a pleasure to be on with all of you. Lumumba Speaks. Another fire conversation, brother. Congratulations. I heard you made a transition on your PhD status, and
yes,
I look forward to seeing your publications. That being said, this is a tough conversation, but a necessary one. I just wanted to drop in a couple of things. I actually think you're all right, but the paradigm that you're drawing, you're not seeing each other's arguments. So like what Tunija is saying is correct, but also what Lumumba and the panel is saying is correct. And what I wanted to say is this: we have to pull back to 10,000 feet and ask ourselves a question. The structure in which we live, who designed it? Did Black African Americans and Africans design it? Or did European powers design it? That's to the panel.
Well, the destruction of the Black family, the system was created by the Social Security system, and that system was designed by, of course, probably the Federal Reserve or whoever. I don't know, they white or Jewish, I don't know.
Okay, well, this is the crucial question. Now, in fairness,
so I can answer the question. The system and the structure was created by European Americans.
Okay, Professor Lumumba, in fairness, I did not see your opening argument. And yes, so if there are things that you said already that I say, please let me know and I will pause.
Okay, no problem.
Okay. It is my view that the system is functioning the way it was designed to be operating. And what's happening is the destructive aspect for Black people is tremendous. And the reason why is this: the structure for marriage was never constitutionally intended for Africans, period, full stop. Africans are not included in the first Constitution. They are only included as a third party reference to, but not citizens. Black citizenship, if you want to call it that, doesn't happen until 1865, 1867, depending on what marker you want to take. Now, why would I go all the way back there to talk about what's happening now? Well, I go back there because it has to do with the family structures that we have from our existence foundation. And this is why Tunija is correct. We were never intended to be married. We were never intended to have control of our children. We were never intended legally to have a status where we could cooperate and build assets within a family structure.
But brother, if I could, everything you're saying is true. We were never intended, but we did anyway.
Yeah, we did that though.
But we did anyway.
Well, it depends on what you believe we did. if you're referring to the golden age of the Black Wall Street, Black independence, 1870 to about 1920, if you go back and look at the data, and Professor Jared Ball has gone through painstaking detail about this, that in reality, Black Americans were a very small percentage of the entrepreneurs, meaning, and this is how I'm defining it, Black American entrepreneurs that hired Black Americans and that their capital originated in Black America and was implemented in Black America.
Right.
So what I mean by that is, in even the golden period that we hold as our independence period, most Black wealth was driven through the white economy and was a component of the white economy. It was not its own separate.
No, but I'm not talking about wealth. I'm simply talking about Black people, even during the Holocaust of enslavement, still were married. Right? We even after the Holocaust of enslavement, even
Can I use the stat, Bakari?
I'm sorry.
Can I use the stat that from 1890 to the 1960 that 80% of Black families it was married household, 2-parent households?
That is true.
That's a different situation.
But you brought that up. You brought up marriage and children and families.
1870 to 1920.
Right, and I'm telling you from 1890 to the 1960s that our people we had families, Black families were thriving as a family culture.
And I'm going to tell you that those quote unquote thriving Black families were a result of industrialization, incorporation into factory work, and 2 Black parents working together with factory income and healthcare.
That's still family. Like they were still together.
Prove me wrong.
I'm not trying to prove you wrong. We're on the same page, but you're trying to say right.
I'm taking you back to bring you to that point because there's a larger point.
I get your point, but you're trying to say like we could never do it. This new single parent household thing, this only started in the 70s. We know the single motherhood thing with our people only started in the 70s. So I'm not going to disrespect what our people did from 1890 to the 1960s. That still counts.
Hold on. This is a crucial point. It happened in the 1970s, specifically 1972, because Nixon allowed the big industrial powers, the factories, to go offshore. That's when offshoring started. And the last hired, first fired were Black Americans. And so the family started to crumble when the economics up under the family, which was factory work, disappeared. And Black women were able to access college and welfare, and Black men were not able to access any of that. And so they went to the street, and they've been in the street ever since then. But how did we get there? And this is why I started you back where I did, which was in the 19th century and the 18th century. Because even when we had our glory period, it was with white economics up under us. And we need to see that to understand what's happening now, where now we have no white economics up under us because 70% of our people are what they call unskilled labor.
But let me say this, Butterfly.
Go ahead.
And I think you're providing a good example of the history of particularly how the Black family intertwined with economics, right? But the issues we're seeing today in terms of single parent households, women choosing to be single parents, has nothing to do with economics.
It actually does. And this
hold on. When a woman comes on a live stream, and matter of fact, Kevin Samuels had a show where this was a woman, she was with the father of her child. The man, they had 3 children, and he paid all the bills. And she was able to be a stay-at-home mother. And she said, I left him to get myself together. Kevin Samuels asked why. She couldn't even give him a reason why she left. So there are situations in America where women are leaving men, even though they have children with them, and economics is not an issue. We have to be honest about that.
And I'm trying to be as honest as possible. And there's one assumption that you're making that makes your analysis slightly off. And that is this. When women, all women, compare black men to other men, who is the standard?
So hold on very quickly, Vanessa. We don't make ad hominem attacks, right? I stated that at the top of the channel. You can attack the argument. We don't attack the person. So because you're making that claim and you're speaking ill of him, particularly when he, of course, has transitioned, we're going to have to put you on timeout.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think what
this is the crucial point. This is the crucial point, folks. When women.
So once again, you asked the question about who are they comparing themselves to?
No, who are they comparing black men to? Who sets the standard? Black men or white men?
Well, I can't answer that question.
You can.
But here's the thing. And I can speak from my example. When I was married, we had no financial issues whatsoever. We owned property. We were doing fine. I come home from work one day. She says, "I don't want to be married anymore." If these things happen, there are situations that are devoid of finances. There are people who just make bad decisions.
We have to be
I'm not going to argue that.
Of course, there
that's
are.
That's the point, and that's the point that I'm making. There are sometimes there were times in my life where Vi, I'm gonna need you to cam up and cue before I bring you on the broadcast. There were times in my life where I simply made bad decisions, and it wasn't because of an overarching system of white hegemony, anti-black racism, or economic issues. It happens.
Well, absolutely, Professor Lumumba, and I'm not going to diminish your experience. What I am going to say, though, is it is somewhat anecdotal. That was your experience,
correct?
Your partner and how she chose to handle conflict resolution in your relationship.
But what I've also can say is that when I worked at the Montgomery County Fatherhood Initiative, these type of things took place as well.
Oh, of course. And I'm going to argue
where there are no financial issues, irrespective of the race or ethnic background of the individuals involved. And the women just like, matter of fact, I had a situation, and Brother Westside Mike knows this, where I was in a long-term relationship with a woman. We were fine financially. She breaks up for me because she wanted to be for the streets and started complaining about now she was struggling financially. It made no sense.
Let me meet you in the middle, Felipe. Let me meet you in the middle. And I'm gonna give you this. What I think Felipe is talking about is black people is used to working on some type of level of sovereignty, and the system was designed for the results it actually is now. Now I'm gonna say this: when he say it was about money, I think he have a point there, because guess what? Now they don't have to take it. It's the same analogy as the drugs being put in the black community. You don't have to do the drugs that's in the black community, but you just did them. Now, this was the thing. The reason why the government wanted the women out of the house, not because of feminism, but because of taxes. If y'all divided, more taxes, y'all living in different houses, like Kevin Samuel said.
That's been documented. That the goal is to get women to work more so that the government can have two tax bases two income they could tax.
And now they want to be stay-at-home moms and stuff like that. But now the system is this. They should have never took the bait in the beginning, because now you would never, like, it would almost be impossible for all the women to go back to being in the home, because the rate of inflation would go up so much. They would tax you so much on everything else that it's not worth the risk. You know what I mean? They didn't have to take the bait. Now, when you going back to saying black men was on drugs, you know, when they were saying, Tunaja was saying, I think Tunaja was saying, but anyway, black men being on drugs, we didn't accept it at large numbers, but the women accepted the Social Security at large numbers, very high numbers, in the name of being independent, disguised as extra tax dollars.
Well, I am trying to employ the Socratic method a little bit here to make us think through the process. and to actually see the assumptions we're making and why. Listen, I don't want to ignore the comment that Professor Lumumba made. I just want to put it in a context to say it's not just money. Relationships are a number of factors, but the standard of what a successful life partner for marriage in the United States is a white man. It is not a black man.
Right. But I would, if I could,
bingo.
The retort that I would provide is that when you have conversations, and the greatest example I could provide of this was Kevin Samuel's channel, when he would have these conversations with these black women about why did you leave the father of your child who wanted to have a family, wanted to be married, they would bring up all kinds of issues, but none of the issues they brought up was what the white man as a standard or financial issues.
Well, I could make an argument.
I'm just going off the horse's mouth.
I got it, and I will tell you why I think they said that. But Sister Michelle was about to say something, so she's the woman on the panel. Do your thing.
Brother Philippe, is it Philip or Felipe? I'm sorry.
It's actually Philippe, but I don't care. You can call me any of the above.
Brother, I thank you for your perspective and putting everything in a clear so everybody can understand, and also supporting me and Brother Nigel's perspective from our perspective. And Brother Lumber and Brother CD, I thank you for sharing your personal experiences. And you're right; these things, they are happening. I've worked with women who are making decisions that even I have to step back sometimes, and it's out there. Trust me.
Yeah, making decisions that actually are in their worst interest.
Yes,
financially. You like, hey, you can stay with this guy, not leave him. Right? But you're gonna be real about this.
My coworkers and my clients, yeah, I see it. So
yeah.
I see it.
I remember my best friend, he was making close to $200,000 a year. His wife was a stay-at-home mom. They had so much money they was able to even have a chef in the home. She left him, moved to Miami, and was working at a cashier at a grocery store.
Wow.
God. So that's what I'm saying. It's like it ain't no fight. It wasn't fighting.
I will just make the argument that Michelle and to Nigel were making, which is as long as we're pointing at each other and fighting with each other, we can't actually solve it. And more importantly, that we can't even come up with a shield against it. And
so here's the thing, and I'm going to say this, and I'm glad you brought this up. But this only tends to happen when we talk about highlighting and illuminating Black women's poor decision making.
Accountability.
Right. The second issue is the only way men can protect themselves from situations like this is to what? Not procreate.
Yeah.
That's the only way you can protect yourself from it.
No. Listen, I understand why you might feel that way. And now I'm going to try to take the perspective. I have two sisters. It is a tough challenge to find a partner out here to build something with. And I will give you an example. In my one sister's case, and this is not the norm, but I'm just going to use her as an example. She's a UC Berkeley grad in computer science. She's a Northwestern master's grad in business, and she's also a Harvard grad in business. Now, when she goes to the marketplace to find a partner, the quote-unquote equal yoke, the quote-unquote I'm going to find my match in Black America, Black male America, it's tough. It's tough.
So let me ask you this question. Let me ask you the question about your sister. Because men, we value women for reasons other than education and credentials and degrees.
Correct. Yes.
That's right. I'm gonna try to be gentle about this because I have a sister myself. My sister.
Okay. Let's talk from your sister and my sister.
Right. Is your sister an above average looking woman?
Yes. She's beautiful.
Is she physically fit?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. She's gorgeous.
That's good for you because I've never said my sister was gorgeous.
Well, I'm not saying it. But she does. She takes care of her look, and she takes care of her body. Yes.
Okay.
But regardless, what I'm trying to get at is they've set up a system economically, socially, media-wise that gets us fighting. And the treatment has not been equal between men and women, how the system treats us, even though we are both Black. And what winds up happening is we have all of these issues with each other where we cannot see the larger thing of who set up the whole thing. We're on the field as players, and we didn't write the rule book, and we have officials that are not us. And so what's happening is all kinds of crazy stuff is happening all over the field based on the rules that were set up, and that we don't get to make the calls.
But this once again comes back to
we can make the choices.
Accountability. I have to look at the person who's making this, who's personally, individually making decisions that are harming me.
Yeah,
right.
They're harming you.
If I'm in a boxing ring, right, I don't have any control over who the judges are, but I'm damn sure going to take umbrage with the person who's punching me in the face.
But this was, and I'm speaking to where I am to make us think about what we're actually saying. They are doing the things that are economically built in the system to make the system money. The reason why the country is so engaged in the court system for child support and alimony is because the courts make money and are run off of the money going through those courts.
We know that, but the woman still has the individual choice to go there and do that stuff.
No,
exactly.
The court can't make money if a person doesn't go there.
They have economic incentives to do what they're doing.
But you still don't have to do it.
Yes, you are correct. Just like you don't have to do drugs. But that also means that you are conscious and that you had parents in place. I'm fortunate. I had two parents in my household. I know my father. I know my grandfather. And I had a structure to help me make good decisions. But we also know that within our community, many of our people, men and women, don't have that. And they're making decisions on what they know and what they choose.
And this is what I want to say to that. If a child is born into the world and they don't have both parents in the home, then, so let me give an example. I was at Ohio State, and we were having a conversation about criminal justice reform. What ended up taking place was a young man got up there. He talked about he grew up in a single parent household and they were impoverished, and he turned to crime to make a living. And I said, well, then that means you need to go speak to your mother and your father and ask them why they chose to bring you into this world and not put you in a position to set you up for success. So when a child comes into this world and they're in a single parent household, that child needs to grow up one day and have a conversation with their parents about why I was brought into the world in this type of situation. Did not put me on a pathway to success. That's what that person needs to do.
I would agree that parents should communicate to their children about why their circumstances coming up were a certain way. I think that's good. I think it's even better if it's both parents having the conversation and they have an agreed narrative as to what they did. But we have
to be honest. A lot of people nowadays have children for selfish reasons.
Well, I want to go back. I want to go back to where I started because all of it is on a straight line. And the straight line is the system was never designed to have thriving Black African man and woman in a home with children that they created, creating thriving children that all hold assets.
But we did it anyway.
Right. Can I just add something? I think the mistake there's a little bit of a mistake there when we say we did it. When it happened before, you remember the condition, there was a reason why the civil rights occurred. it was a terrible time too for so many things. It's about control. They had more direct control over our communities then. Then
Correct.
when the civil rights occurred, then they put new systems in place. Malcolm X warned about it. It's almost prophetic. He warned about it, that what is about to come. Because these people, the way they operate is that they operate at a high level, that they think ahead. They've had time for crying out loud.
And we have to as well, right? Because this is a fatalistic narrative in which we have no agency to control.
No, I'm giving you. You asked me for the solution. I'm giving you the agency.
Hold on. Because no institution in this country has control over the values and the behavior that you normalize in your home.
Exactly.
None.
Actually, they do. Hold on.
They do.
Look, it actually does, because the brainwasher in our community, and every single one of us probably had this, is a television.
Once again, you can turn it off.
You don't have to fall for it.
That television is.
Was it not a black man that was supposed to turn it off in the first place? When did he? You know, this thing starts from somewhere. It didn't just start overnight.
We don't watch TV in our house unless it's
but you see, you are using anecdotal cases.
No,
you are not looking at the general. That's why you have to look at things
I'm providing an example of agency. I'm providing an example.
Okay, if you want to start that now, start it now. My point is that when it happened before, but it wasn't enough. Clearly, if we are complaining about it now, it wasn't enough. And I'm not surprised it's not enough, because what is required is a lot more than that, than what has happened in the past.
Let me piggyback you to Niger. We don't have the leverage. But we can build it, because Tunisia and Lumumba are on this panel. But presently, we don't have the leverage. We got civil rights not because we marched and protested. We got civil rights because we had leverage. The leverage was we were the dominant workforce in farm labor and in home labor. We were domestics and we were farm labor. And if we decided not to go to work, then we could shut down the Southern economy economically in agriculture, which it was its primary basis, and we could shut down white households. Stop. That's why the marches were to demonstrate how many black people agreed with the narrative that were put forth by the leadership, that if we wanted to, we could shut this down. And what happened after that? Black people, along with other groups, passed the 1965 Immigration Act that then allowed a change in the demographics of the country, which we thought the new immigrants would work with us in order to change more things about the Constitution. What actually happened was that those immigrants were then brought in to reduce the black presence in the areas that they controlled in order to take away their leverage, and then they were flipped to serve the system, not black. So that's what happened.
I'm going to say this. Because I think there are a number of variables when we talk about the civil rights movement. Derek Bell, who of course was the progenitor of critical race theory, critical race theory stems from critical legal studies. You're familiar with this because you're an attorney.
Absolutely. Marshall as well.
Right. Yeah. They talked about that, and Derek Bell made a claim that really upset the civil rights establishment, stating that the civil rights movement was successful in part because the American government was concerned with its international reputation. Right, and that the Soviet Union at the time was using this as propaganda to show that America was not the so-called purported leader of the free world and for democracy, as they stated. Derek Bell made this claim. People pushed back, said, "Oh, this is blasphemy. You're a blasphemer." But later, because of the Freedom of Information Act, cables came out showing that what he said was in fact true.
Yeah.
Right, that a lot of this was based on foreign policy in America wanting resources, natural resources on the African and Asian continent, so they had to put on a good public face, right? So they had to they were being progressive in terms of the treatment of Africa's displaced children. But I also think, and this is just my position, that as a Pan-Africanist, I focus on agency and self-determination, even in the courses that I teach at the collegiate level, is that I am of the fundamental belief, based on the way I raised my children and my even anecdotal experience, and even, of course, what I saw growing up with my friends and their parents' households, that we could control the home. If the TV is a disseminator of anti-black, pro-white propaganda, we had the power to turn the TV off and unplug it. But with that being said, I'm going to allow everyone to make a final comment before we close out. Also, make sure you hit this like and subscribe button. I'm going to put the link to my Medium article in the chat one more time. Please follow me on Medium. I will be posting and writing a lot of content on Medium moving forward. And also, you could like, subscribe, and share at Lumumba Speaks on YouTube. So the link to my article on Medium is in the chat. Hopefully, you all can, of course, read the article and then, of course, follow me on Medium. But also, we can start with Sister Michelle, for the Tanija, for the Philippe, Westside Mike, and then CD, and then we will close out.
Again, I hope we have this discussion in love. Our complexes, our problems of the people are so complex and mirrored. I like and we all dissecting it the best way we can as we live our day-to-day lives. Again, shout out to everyone here on the panel, and good luck to my brother Tunija in the UK.
Brother Tanija. Brother Tanija, what say you? Final thoughts. All right. Brother Felipe. Brother Philippe. Is it Philip or Philippe or Felipe?
It's actually Philippe, but I respond to all of those. I don't put people through the mental gymnastics.
Okay.
That here's what I want to say, because we want to talk about action items, excuse me. Because I do agree with you that we do have the ability to change the dynamic. But the change, in my view, is everyone within the sound of my voice should take the African ancestry test that Sierra Leone is using and the other African countries are using to find out your DNA and where you came from. All right, start there. Second, that we need to make investments individually in building assets for ourselves, both in the United States and on the continent, to build a structure like what Michelle and Tunija are talking about, to defend ourselves. We are the only group in the United States that does not work with its continent consistently and does not work with the countries we came from, which is why I'm suggesting that everyone do their DNA test to find out where you came from. Third, family structure. That when a Chinese person, wherever they are in whatever nation state they are in, they are Chinese first. They are whatever nation they're in second. I am of the view that you are African first, and whatever else you are second. And that to that extent that you want to try to set up in your household, if you can, as best you can, a system that is more replicative of an African dynamic as opposed to an American dynamic. Now, what does that mean? Well, it's going to mean something different for each person. Everybody has a different partner, and some people don't have Black partners. So you got to build it the way that you build it. But in terms of construct with other Black brothers, that the goal is A, not to tear down Black women, not to tear down Black men, but to figure out how we can come together to build in whatever level that we can meet each other on the field. Meaning, maybe it's doing a business together. Maybe it's just patronizing a buddy of yours or somebody you know that has a Black business and that they need customers. Maybe it's just doing the little minimal things where it's donations to charities or participating in volunteer work to help build a Black infrastructure. But what we're doing right now is we're doing exactly what the system wants us to do, which is to fight with each other, blame each other, not have control of our children, have the system control our children, which is exactly the system they set up when they brought us here, which was to control our children and not to allow us to do it. And so to the extent that we can be conscious and we can work with each other, then to the extent that we can build an economic infrastructure and supply chains with our African countries to actually have some strength. And once we have that kind of leverage, then we can make bigger moves. But until we are actually conscious that we're Africans first and not all this other stuff, then it makes it very difficult to even get on the same page.
I would agree wholeheartedly. African family first. Brother Westside Mike.
I want to just say this was a great conversation. I'll respect everybody's opinion. Brother Felipe, you going to come a little bit earlier. I learned a lot. I learned a few things listening to you, brother. So, and I agree with a lot of things that you did say, and to everybody else. My standpoint really comes from understanding both sides, and those two sides are, yes, seeing what the system is causing to us and seeing what we're doing to ourselves, and understanding the difference between trying to, bring our people down and bashing them versus holding our people accountable for what they do, whether it's on them on a personal level where it affects the community, or whether it's working through the system to affect the community. And I think that's kind of a big difference with our people, whether they look towards whether it's the system, and then we look towards what we're doing to ourselves. And I think that we have to look on both sides and realize it's a combination of both. And then once we come to a common ground on that, and then work on those issues, we can get farther in life. Yes, we do have to stop. The men got to stop attacking the women got to stop attacking the men. And we have to start calling those things out when that does happen, when it's not necessary. Everything's in the public eye, and it's only gotten this far because we have allowed it to get this far without calling out for the decades that it's been going on. And now conversations like this, panels like this, bringing people on and being around people like this helps to stop that, because we're not those kind of people. We might have disagreements, but I'm not about to put my brother down. I'm not going to put my sister down. I can disagree with you. I can have different points, but I'm not going to attack you. I still want to work with you, and I still want you to work with me for us to still have an understanding. None of us are going to agree 100% with the next person. So we got to be mature enough to understand that and still work together to complete the common goal, because we all are in the same pot. We all are going through a lot of the same issues. So we do have to put ourselves first and work together. That's my final word.
Appreciate that, brother Westside Mike. And brother Westside Mike, we're from the same city. Shout out to West Dayton strong. And so we come from a African-centered community in West Dayton, to where, hey, we were always held accountable for everything that we said and did. Would you agree with that, brother Mike?
Yes. And I think that, like, once again, like, not only that, we both came from 2-parent households where our parents are still married and together. And, and I see the difference. I grew up seeing the difference when you would be raised in a single-parent household versus a 2-parent household. My dad didn't let a lot of stuff slide. My dad wasn't letting me sag my pants and do this, that, and the other. I was held accountable for what I did. And I look back in life and I'm thankful that I was, because I see where it gets you farther in life. It was a good thing. And that's kind of like, I think it's different because now here I am as an adult, and I'm just trying to hold adults accountable. But if they're not used to being held accountable, you know what I'm saying? It's even harder, because they're going through their life just cruising by doing whatever they want, and they've gotten rewarded for it, whether it be a man or a woman. So,
and that's a good point, because I don't mean to cut you off, but we're running short on time, but I was having a conversation offline a bit with a brother. He talked about how America promotes anti-intellectualism and oftentimes even rewards anti-intellectualism. Right? We see this in the rap music, the degeneracy that's being promoted. What was the woman? She was on Dr. Phil, a white girl. She said, cash me outside. She got a record deal.
Yeah, and like what Mr. Felipe said,
rewards this type of degenerate behavior.
That's like what Mr. Felipe said. There's incentives to going along with the system. We got to be smarter than that. We got to be better than that. We got to understand that if we go along with that, it's just look at what welfare system and all that got us. It's an incentive, but it got us worse than where we was at before.
Right. So I think sometimes we have to look at delayed gratification. Brother CD, I'm gonna let you close us out.
Oh yeah. So my ending points are, if you want to get married, but I don't think Black people should get state married. I think Black people need to get common law married. You can go out online. You can print you out a common law marriage contract, and sign that, the state cannot get in your business. You have to go to court to get a divorce, and it's at fault divorce. Whoever did it, that's who get the divorce. You're under the common law at that point, so the government can't touch you. Second, don't sign that paper that's at the hospital, that acknowledgement of paternity form. You just signing yourself up for child support. They gonna get you. They
It
need to
actually
fight to
says
get you.
that. Yeah, it says that if
Yeah.
you sign this paper, you're on the hook for child support. It says that when you on the paperwork.
Yeah, you're obligor. You're not a parent. That did not establish your rights as a parent. Only thing that
Right. Yeah,
establishes your
that's
rights as a
correct.
parent is marriage and DNA. That's the only thing you can do.
Right, and if you go to court and get legal parent and guardianship, but you're right about that. That paying child support doesn't establish you to have legal parental rights. That's a great point, brother. Great point.
Yeah, black people are suffering not from much as white supremacy, but the entertainment of white supremacy. So the propaganda of white supremacy. You got to stop looking at the celebrities and thinking that that's us. That is not us. I think black men should get out the system by leaving the system. Go establish yourself in Africa. Get your African woman. If you got a good woman here in America, bring her to Africa, get out of the system of this minstrel show that we living in. You don't have to entertain it. You don't have to be a part of it. Good intellectual, moral, righteous black people should get together. And that's it. That's all I gotta say, man. I appreciate you, Lamuma. I didn't know you went to Ohio State, man. You doing your thing, man.
I appreciate it.
He
Appreciate it.
he really a Michigan fan.
No, I'm not. Hey, don't do that. 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 We're gonna have a problem. Listen, we're gonna need some accountability. You say something like that, we're gonna need some accountability. So once again, family, I put the link to my article on Medium in the chat. Please, if you can, check out the article. Follow me on Medium. That'd be greatly appreciated. The fine art of black male bashing. To everyone who tapped in, appreciate you, love you. Until next time, y'all know what to do. Peace.